The opinions expressed by tonight's guest do not represent the opinions or position of Spaced Out Radio, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with SOR Media. Listener discretion is advised. Here at Spaced Out Radio, we are about to take you higher. Broadcasting from the Rocky Mountains of Colorado to you listening around the world. This is Spaced Out Sunday with host Tessa N Thomas. You can follow Tessa on our Facebook page at Spaced Out Radio, on Twitter at TessaTNT, and you can subscribe to her YouTube channel. Go to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio for the archive.
But we break on command 'cause women rule the world.
Buckle up, space travelers. Let the countdown begin.
9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
It's time to go for a ride with host Tessa N Thomas.
I'm such a lucky guy 'cause after all this time, it's like the deeper I go, the deeper I fall.
Good evening, Spaced Out Radio. Secure your tinfoil hats, buckle down tight, and hold on loosely as we soar over the rocky tops of the La Platas on a Rocky Mountain high. Get sucked into the vortex of the Four Corners and settle down snugly at mile marker 419.9 in colorful Colorado. It is Sunday, October 7th, Monday, October 8th, for those of you on the East Coast and beyond, and this is Spaced Out Radio. Hope you had a rockin' weekend, an awesome day, and an even better evening. I am your host, Tessa N Thomas, and I am live tonight broadcasting from beautiful Bayfield, Colorado. We are thousands strong nightly on Spaced Out Radio Network, spacedoutradio.com, Spreaker, Paranormal Radio, TalkStream Live, as well as Deep Talk Radio, which you can find at deeptalkradio.com. Don't forget to head to our website, spacedoutradio.com, where you can peruse the Spaced Out Radio store and read the encounter online dealing with everything strange, paranormal, and odd. Tonight, I have a treat for all my guys and gals out there. Tonight, we will be covering the Four Corners area, and our title tonight is The High Strangeness in the Four Corners area. And tonight, we have with us Terra Goens. And Terra is a 20-year-old Durango resident and amateur paranormal researcher. She has encountered and experienced a multitude of ghost encounters, synchronicities, and instances of high strangeness in the Four Corners area. Hey, Terra, welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you. I've been wanting to cover our area for so long.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
So, yeah, it's so great to have you. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself as far as, like, your first paranormal experience and what interested you in parapsychology and the paranormal?
Well, what really got me interested was my first memory, actually, was an out-of-body experience that took place in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And ever since then, I've just kind of had this buzz in my mind about what is this all about, you know, what is out there. And that's really just led me into different avenues of research and looking into things.
That's awesome. And we were talking earlier about, parapsychology, and, I have an interest in it as well, because anything in the field of the paranormal that's going to help to build upon it and build the data and prove to so many closed-minded people out there that this is going on, and parapsychology is just another realm of doing that. And there aren't a lot of schools. When I was first looking into it, the only schools I could find were over in the UK, but I heard recently there are some over near the East Coast that cover parapsychology. And you said you kind of just dabble with it on your own. How exactly do you do that?
Through publications like this one, I really look into books, a lot of books, reading articles, going to people's websites, really just the information's out there. You just kind of have to look for it. I mean, the internet is a great resource.
It is. There's so much stuff out there these days, and you can look up anything on the internet. It's just insane, but awesome at the same time. Like, anything's out there. Like, even working on my car, I call myself a YouTube mechanic because, I have this 2008 car, and I'm doing all this work on it from videos that I find on YouTube, and it kind of makes you feel good about yourself. And before, you'd have to go out and check out a book or purchase a book. Even mechanical stuff, it's like $40 each or whatever to get a book on your car. But yeah, like, everything's out there, everything's within your reach, which is kind of scary, but it's amazing and awesome at the same time.
Yeah, it definitely is a very interesting knowledge-based renaissance that we kind of get to go through with the internet, where really anything is at your fingertips. And I think it can be used wrongly and it can be intimidating, but I think for the most part, it lets people learn a lot of things. Like you said, fixing your car, or like getting into like the more Fortean and weird subjects that like are kind of hard to find in any type of like usual outlets. I mean, there are only so many books your local library is going to cover on certain subjects. So having the internet is really an amazing tool in that way.
Yeah, and I do still use my library, but like you said, they don't have everything, and it's kind of not irritating, but somewhat in that realm when they don't have the book that you're looking for, and you have to request it, and then they order it from another library, which could be close or it could be far, far away, and then you have that wait time when you can just look on the internet, and there's Amazon and so many other places where you could just buy a book online or whatever. It's pretty awesome. But yeah, so have you noticed, is there an increase in paranormal activity these days and people with paranormal awakening, or do you kind of feel like it's the same? What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's becoming more widely discussed. I think these things were always here in this volume. I just think there's been a long period in our history of ignoring this type of thing. But if you look back into folklore and into like a lot of different traditions of different cultures, they're riddled with these types of stories of time slips, of lights in the sky, of all these different types of things. So I think now we're just more connected to each other. Everything can be put on blast on Facebook, or texting each other, or calling each other. You can call overseas now without it costing a fortune. So I think these things have always been just as prevalent, but I think we're talking about it more and noticing it more and bringing it up to each other.
And I was reading recently that somewhere in the Bible it's saying that in the end times there will be more paranormal awareness. People will like kind of realize their gifts and have more opening of the third eye and more gifts coming to pass. Do you feel like you're gifted in any way? I mean, being able to see things in the out-of-body experience, like I haven't tried to intentionally do it because I'm afraid, if I go out, I'm not going to be able to get back in, or if I go out, something's going to jump in before I get there. But people have said you have like this silver chain that keeps you connected as your spirit to your body, and there's really no way to get lost from yourself. But, I do have that, subconscious fear that something will jump in there before I get back, because so many things have tried to take me over before, and it's just kind of a fear of mine. It's what do you think about that?
I do think that is a reasonable fear. Personally, I've never seen the chain, but I've had friends talk about it. And as far as your first point about there being more awareness towards the end, I think that's a really interesting thing to look at. I think it would make sense to me in some ways, but I also don't know that that's what we're encountering. And as far as whether or not I'm gifted, I think I'm sensitive, definitely, to some things. I think I have experiences that others around me don't necessarily have, or I'm quicker to point things out when something's off or weird.
Mm-hmm. And you
I
kind
don't
of
know.
have,
I think
like,
I just
that
am
gut
kind of
instinct.
intuitive.
Yeah, intuitive. You have that gut instinct, and you can read people. Are you able to read people?
Oh, yes. I definitely have quite a bit of empathy in my life as far as, like, my day-to-day. I notice when someone across the street, like, has just a particular vibe coming off of them, and just things like that all over. Sometimes I can say things that I think are happening with people before they can tell me.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome.
So I think there's some of that coming into play.
So you said your first paranormal experience was an out-of-body experience. Can you walk us through that and kind of draw a picture of that for us? Like, what exactly happened?
Yes. So at the time, I lived in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and I was young, maybe 1, 2, and we had this yard with this big chain link fence around it, and it was just a dirt yard. And my grandmother on my father's side and my mother were sitting at this table, and they were just kind of holding me between them on the table and chatting and dressing me up and different things. And I remember just being off to the side watching them, just kind of observing. I didn't really have any thoughts about it. I didn't really feel anything about it. It wasn't of, like, conscious choice or experience. I don't remember experiencing any real thought. I just remember watching them talk and watching them kind of just have their afternoon. So that was kind of an interesting thing.
I'm pretty sure that I've had a couple out-of-body experiences. The first one happened when I was in MRP in the Marine Corps, and that's the Marine Rehabilitation Platoon, and I decided to lay down for a nap, which is really rare for me. Like, I'll sleep when I'm dead is what I say, and I always go to bed at like 4 or so in the morning, and I'll get up at 10. I don't sleep very long, but at this point in my life, I'm deciding to take a nap before lunch, and I laid down on this rack, and I could hear the sergeant yell for us to, line up. And at this point, like, I could not move. Like, I could move my eyes, but the rest of my body I could not move. And, I'm struggling with every fiber of my being to get out of this locked up, mess. And I was sore for about a week after that because of how hard I strained my muscles. But during this time, I got up from the rack, which is right by the bathroom, aka the head, and I get off the rack and I walk in there, and it is as if I'm really, really, really drunk. Like, I cannot hold myself up, and I'm having to lean on the walls and the sink and stuff to get around. And I could see, everybody doing what they're doing around me, and the guys coming in to work on the sinks because, they were plugged or something. And then, I heard the sergeant call, and I couldn't do anything. And then another time was just recently when I was house sitting for my friend and watching her 2 Doberman pinschers, and I'm laying on the couch and I'm watching some paranormal show and on Destination America, and all of a sudden I kind of fall off the couch onto the floor, and I'm trying to get up, but I can't. I'm just like crawling around and falling over, and then I turn around and I see my body on the couch. Like, I'm on the couch and I'm sleeping, and so I crawl back to the couch and I lay down, and then I sit up in my body, and I'm like, holy crap. And, it was the same thing. I felt like I was a drunk little baby because I'm on all fours and I'm falling over, and I can't control my mobility. And so I think that was out-of-body experiences, and I didn't have any control over it, and it was really weird, but at the same time really cool. I'm like, what just happened? Like, how did that happen? And I don't know. Do you intentionally try to do that these days because you did have that experience, or no?
I have intentionally tried to do it a few times to not very much success, but I do hear stories from friends on occasion. They'll call me up and be like, hey, you were in my room last night. And I'm like, well, what do you mean I was in your room last night? I was in my room last night. And they're like, no, you came and you pulled me out of my body and we had a whole journey. So I don't know if that's my friends having some really vivid dreams, or maybe I'm succeeding and not remembering, because I have done some reading saying that it is hard to remember your out-of-body experiences. But yours are really interesting. They sound like they could have started off as sleep paralysis. Like, a lot of what you're describing reminds me of the times I've had sleep paralysis episodes.
Yeah, with the first one that I had, I had this dream state, like where I'm stumbling around into the head, into the bathroom, and, seeing what everybody's doing, and I'm carrying on or talking and walking around like I'm out of it, like I'm really, really messed up. And then, I could hear the sergeant call for us to go, and then that's when I woke up and couldn't move. Like, my eyes could move, but my body couldn't. The other time, I didn't really have that sleep paralysis thing. I, fell onto all fours off the couch and then crawled a little ways and fell over a few times, and then realized I wasn't going to get anywhere in any timely manner, and turned around, and that's when I saw myself on the couch, and I was just like, holy crap, what's happening? Did I just die or something? Because I do have heart issues. They're not medically stated, but I've had weird things happen with my heart, and so I was afraid like I had died, and so I tried to get back in my body, and it did actually work. Like, I sat up and I was like, holy crap, what was that? The only other time that I've had sleep paralysis was when I was in Farmington, New Mexico at this bar. I think it was called I wanted to say The Sidekick, but it wasn't. The Office, I think it was called, and they had these apartments in the back where they'd let the band stay. And we decided to lay down for a nap that day, so we're well rested for the night, and as usual, I'm having issues getting to sleep and quieting my mind, and all of a sudden I see this figure in the bedroom, and there's no windows, it's just a brick building, and you can see the light coming under the door, but I could see this figure standing by my bed who was darker than dark, like he was black. And then all of a sudden I heard his voice, and it wasn't with my ear, it was in my mind. And he told me that he was going to have me, and I was like, no, you can't have me. And he laughed, and when he did, he got this grin upon his face, and I shared a picture of it last night on SOR Space Travelers. I'll probably do it again right now. But when he did, like, his teeth, basically you could see them glowing and shimmering, and they were sharp fang-like teeth, like, all throughout. And he reached down and he kissed me, and when he did, it sent this, like, bolt of lightning or electricity through my body, and it really hurt. And at that point, like, I could move my feet. So I started kicking my feet frantically. And if you've ever experienced this paralysis, sleep paralysis, or whatever it is, I think if it was sleep paralysis, I'd have it more than 3 times in my life. But, you're trying to scream, you're trying to get your voice out, but all you can hear is, like, the muffled scream behind your closed lips, and kicking my feet. And all of a sudden, my husband woke up, and he saw the being and grabbed me and pulled me towards him. And then he was gone. And, I was so afraid. Like, I've seen shadow people before, but this one was really strange, communicating with me telepathically, and just the shock it sent through my body. And I had to go to work at the portrait studio at Walmart the next day, and I kept looking in my rearview mirror, just feeling like he was there, like he was following me home. And I didn't see him, so that relieved me, and I've never seen him since. So I'm kind of hoping, like, he stayed there. And they actually, I believe, demolished that building, but I'm not sure. Maybe that's just wishful thinking. But I'm thinking I did hear something about that. Have you had any experience with shadow people or any sort of being like this?
I have, and actually that story is really interesting to me because it does fit with a lot of the accounts of sleep paralysis I've experienced and I've studied and people around me have experienced. Because this dark shadow being is very common even historically in episodes of sleep paralysis. There's this very interesting phenomenon with it where sleep paralysis sufferers across the span of space and history, cultures who have no way to communicate until recently have been experiencing these same things. So that makes me wonder what it really is. And I also thought it was really interesting that your husband saw it, because I've definitely seen things and experienced things like that, but I've never had someone, even people in the room, be able to corroborate with me.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, as far as my own sleep paralysis experiences, I don't know when they started, because I just remember having this like anxiety and fear about going to sleep as a child and having really bad insomnia because of that, and all these things, all these sleep-related issues. And then around the time I was 16, I started to kind of connect these weird experiences I would have at night to maybe why I was afraid of sleeping. And I was like, oh, so it's like, it's demons, it's ghosts, it's something. And then I saw this documentary, The Nightmare, that was about sleep paralysis, and I was watching it and I was like, oh, I've been having all these same experiences. Like, it'll be this idea of, sometimes it'll be like your typical paralysis where I just can't move. And then I'll see like a shadow being or a young girl or something will come up and talk to me, or it'll be an unseen force touching me and I won't be able to move. And it'll be very jarring and very frightening. And that'll go on for however long it does. But sometimes it'll be this idea also of, I think I'm awake and I'm doing something just normal in my life in real time. And then something very out of the ordinary will happen. Like, one example is I was living in a basement at the time with 3 other people. There was a door that separated one of us, and then the other 2 mattresses were across the room from me, and that's where my cousins slept. And I was having a sleep paralysis episode. I woke up, I sat up, and my 2 cousins were sitting on their beds, Sean and Jasmine. And I looked at them, and I was kind of in a cold sweat, and I was like, am I awake? Is everything okay? And my cousin Jasmine looked at me and she said, yeah, you're awake. It's okay. And then this like look of realization went over her face. And she said, oh, except we're both at work. Sean's at work right now. And he looked up at me and just blinked out of existence. And I realized I was still sleeping. So I've had a lot of very tangible, very dream state, but realer than real experiences with sleep paralysis, more than I've had the shadow beings.
So did you get a hold of her and see, did she actually experience that too? Or was that just you? Or what exactly was the basis behind that?
She did not experience that. When I finally did wake up, I was alone in the house. Everyone else was at work because I was working third shift at the time, so I was sleeping through the day and everyone else was gone. And I waited for everyone to get home, and I kind of told them the story. I let them know what was going on, and no one really had any recollection of that. I think that was just something within the paralysis, maybe. But I don't know. It's always kind of a question I've had as to maybe, in sleep paralysis, do you go to different realities maybe? Or, is it all the dimethyltryptamine in your brain that causes your dreams and then paired with the paralysis of your body during sleep? It's a very interesting subject.
It is, and there are people that experience it all the time, and there are even people saying that when they do experience it, they can't even open their eyes. Like, their eyelids are frozen shut. Maybe they can hear something, they can hear what's going on around them, but, supposedly their mind has waken up before their central nervous system or their body has. But for me, my eyes are open, and I can see, and I can look around, I can move my eyes, I can breathe, but I can't move anything else until, that shock happened to me. And then I think it shocked my nervous system, and I was able to finally free my feet, which thank God I did, because I don't know what would have happened next. And it makes me wonder, was this a shadow being, or you hear about incubus and succubus. Was this an incubus, or what exactly was this? It was really crazy, and there's so many strange and high levels of strange and dark and different things that do go on around our area. And I've had psychic mediums tell me I don't know if you've ever done the world's largest ghost hunt, but each year they ask you to bring a psychologist and bring, a psychic or a medium. And so I was trying to get a hold of people to join us as a psychic or medium. And each time, like, at first they were like, oh yeah, that's cool. And then once they discovered we're trying to, basically build this bridge between our world and the paranormal world, then they're like, oh no, well, this area is just basically like a huge vortex, and we feel like if we did something like that, like a lot of dark things would happen. I don't know if that's true. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I've heard things like that a lot too, and I've personally felt that way about this area in a lot of different times, because this is a very interesting area in that respect. There are a lot of things that happen here. I think in Durango, I'm kind of hard-pressed to find people who haven't had strange experiences. And I do think there is something to that. I don't think we should necessarily be afraid of trying to build that bridge and have that communication. I do think we should go in cautiously, though. And I've heard, from what I've known, a lot of this area before the colonization was a lot of sacred lands and a lot of ritualistic lands and a lot of areas already known for having these beings and these connections and like these UFOs and these ghosts and all these things going on. So I do think there definitely is something to that with this area. I've had quite a few people come into my life, and when I ask them, why did you move to Colorado? Why Durango? How did you even find this place? They'll tell me things like, oh, well, the energy pulled me here. Oh, well, I dreamt about it. And things like that. So I definitely do think there is something to the idea that there could be vortexes or a large vortex here.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. And I've heard of a lot of stories with, graves being disturbed. In Ignacio, Colorado, when they were building the new junior high school up there and digging to do the foundation and everything, they dug up a bunch of old, like, native bones, and there are stories of hauntings up there at the junior high school in Ignacio. I haven't experienced it, but I've heard a lot of things. But they did put a pause on building so they could, dig up and retrieve these bones and hopefully do a nice reburial and, some sort of ceremony for them so they are at peace. But there are a lot of properties around here. One of my daughters, my oldest daughter, Kinsey, she's 18. One of her friends lives on a property, and an oil company came in and they dug and they put this oil rig in and they dug up bones. And instead of reburying it and calling in, I would say Ute Indians to rebury these bones and do a ceremony for them, they just let them lay there. And so this girl was having all kinds of paranormal experiences. She was hearing voices telling her to do things that weren't good, and just having evil thoughts and hearing voices within her head and things like that. And it just kind of, I just don't understand how people can do that. Like, how do you dig up bones and not have respect for that life? And then, you think about people that are driven by the almighty dollar, which is the root of all evil, basically. They just let it go and they don't think about what's going to happen. I mean, I wish it would haunt them instead of the person living on that property.
Yeah, that definitely is something that bothers me, is when these remains and these artifacts and things like that are found, how it's not handled with care or handled properly. But I do think there are a lot of bones and a lot of things around this area, because as I've learned and as I've looked into it, because I do have Ute members of my family and we do Sundance, and I actually have some interesting stories about that for later and all of that. This was a very heavily populated area before people kind of started to come in and do everything they did and clear the Native Americans out and send them to camps and whatnot. I mean, this was a very, very populated area, so I think that it only makes sense that we would be finding these things and disturbing these things all the time, even now.
Yeah, our house is very haunted, and my husband, he tries to be logical, I guess, and he always says, well, nobody was living here back in those days. But I'm like, look at the trees on our property. We have these trees that are put in a certain pattern, and they're like hundreds of years old. yes, this trailer is only a 70 whatever model, but there was somebody here before us. Like, just because there's not the original dwelling or whatever was on this property, somebody planted these trees and this structure. You know, they're in each corner of the yard, and the one in the backyard is extremely big. Like, it's at least 100 or 150 feet tall blue spruce trees, and we call it the tree fort. And before we got AC, we'd go in there during the summer because that was the coolest place on the property. But we have so much paranormal stuff going on here, some of which I think dates before the guy that passed away here from emphysema, which was back in, I think, the late 90s. And, you know, I've encountered him a few times, but there's other things going on with this property as well that are a bit darker. I don't know. I'm pretty open-minded, and I don't believe everything. Like, I'm not going to eat up everything that somebody feeds me, but I listen to my gut and my instinct, and when it tells me there was somebody here, like, what would you think if you had these trees that were this old? Would you think somebody planted them? Because they're not all over the place. I think somebody was here, and they set up a home, and something tragic happened, and that's what's, you know, causing all these weird things to happen in my house.
Well, I think it would only make sense that if the trees are set specifically, and it's cooler there in the summer, that it would make sense that it was very intentional, especially, you know, earlier on in the time before AC and things like that. If they were set up as like a cool space, that would make sense to me. And then I think another common thing that, like, people don't take into account with hauntings and activity and things like that is that people want to be like, oh, well, this house is new, but all land is ancient. All land is so old and has so much more history than any of us could even fathom. So I think that likely there's a lot of things going on in a lot of places, and we kind of want to look away from it because we don't have any tangible history of it. But I mean, human beings were not always keeping records.
You know, we do have records from the natives. We have the buildings that they built as far as like Mesa Verde, Hovenweep, and all these other places around us, even some that aren't discovered until people move on to the land and do digging and find them because they've been buried by soil, time and, you know, erosion, soil, floods, whatever is happening to cover them up. And so we're finding more and more ruins all the time, but then you see pictographs or something like that, where they put these pictures on the side of the rocks telling a story, and a lot of them, I think, are about hunts and, you know, life as they knew it back in the day, and some of them are alien, like the Kachina dolls. Those are basically all ancient aliens, I believe. If you look at them, like their face mask, all these things that they were wearing, to me, it's ancient alien stuff, like them depicting what they experienced and these gods or beings that came to them. And it's very interesting, and I just wish that I could find the right person to pick the brain instead of, you know, some German or Russian or whatever dude writing stories about what he thinks it is. I wish I could hear from a native to hear what exactly their story on these are. Do you have any idea about the Kachina dolls and what they signify?
The Kachina dolls specifically is something I have heard a lot about, but it's kind of one of those things that got lost in just all the information I've been taking all the time. But as far as Native Americans and ancient alien theory, I have heard a lot of very interesting things from friends of mine and relatives who are Native and who talk about these instances and these stories and this lore and how it could connect to extraterrestrial beings that people at one time thought were gods, because they came with just such technology and such things we couldn't understand. And I definitely do think there is a connection there. Ancient alien theory is something I'm interested in, but it's not something I know a whole lot about. But I do think that there definitely is a connection with a lot of these hieroglyphs we find in places and just all these symbols and things that look like they're telling stories of space travel.
Yeah, and even in, like, you know, the Mayan lands and stuff like that, you know, they found artifacts of these gold they're cast in gold spaceships. It looks exactly like one of our shuttles. I mean, how else could you describe that? Like, if they were trying to make a bird, it would look like a bird. But this looks like a freaking automobile, like a shuttlecraft that is attached to the larger rocket that goes up into space and that comes back to Earth. And so that was really intriguing to me, these finds that they're finding, and with the new satellite mapping and everything they're doing of the Earth these days, they're finding more and more, and then more artifacts are being discovered, and I'm really excited. And even in Egypt, they're finding more and more tombs and more scrolls in there and more information, and the more information, the better I feel, because I like to be educated and I like to know what's going on in my world and what was going on in my world before I was even in existence. And, because we can learn from the past. And what really scares me is schools are taking world history and history out of school. Like, they've actually done that in Cortez, Colorado. I'm like, what the hell are they thinking? Except for they're just trying to dumb our kids down because they're the next generation. They're going to be the ones to take care of us. But if you don't know your history, you're not going to learn from it, and you're going to end up repeating it. And so it really scares me. Like, I don't even know what to think. Like, what is going on in our world? It's just, truth is stranger than fiction, for real.
It really is. And I didn't hear about that, actually, about them taking history out of the classrooms. I don't think that's good. I don't think that's a good thing at all. But on the vein you were saying with the Mayan and Egyptian things, those civilizations also achieved feats that we couldn't achieve today with some of the things they have. There are holes drilled in walls and things in Egypt that are so precise that we can't replicate it now. There are hieroglyphs and things that show light bulbs and just all these things that should not have been back then. And then even on a different kind of vein with it, there are places in the Bible where it definitely, it describes beings coming in on saucers of light, and these things that sound very much like extraterrestrial encounters.
Yeah, and like you're saying, holes drilled, even angles and the preciseness of the cut along the sides. Like, these aren't, hand tools. These are, what they're saying is like laser tools, like more advanced than the technology that we have today. We're building these structures and hoisting them up, and people are talking about, well, they had this log thing where they'd roll these bricks from miles and miles and miles to get it here, but how do they stack them one on top of the other, and how do they put this big old door in the hinge? I can't remember the place, but there's pieces scattered all over the place. Like, there was some sort of epic explosion, and there's hinges, and there's actually a door, and it's like a monstrosity. Like, it's so big. Like, what was even going through this door? Like, do you really need a door that big? But it's just amazing just to look back on that and the technology that built it. Like, there had to be some sort of outside source that was involved, I believe.
I definitely believe that too, and it is something that I am very interested in learning more about. I think that it's kind of something we should give more credence to as just researchers, is connecting these kind of things. Because, I think, you have people out there who represent the community and talk about ancient aliens and all these things and say really crazy things. There are people out there who get public, mass attention and say some really crazy things that discredit the field itself. And I think we do need to make more of a movement towards looking into these things and saying, what evidence is there?
Yeah, and I believe that too, but, we're so busy with our everyday lives and being kept down by the man, as Jack Black would say. And it's true, we're working ourselves to death. Compared to other countries, we work way more and we make way less, and it's just kind of a way to control us, I believe. They're keeping us in a rut so they can keep us down and control us. Because otherwise, had we had the freedom of other countries, we might evolve, but we can't. And, our country right now is so divided, and I can't remember another time that we were so divided until I think back to Vietnam. Like, that was another time that we were really, really divided as a country, and it's just insane, and it makes me sad because, when we stand together, we're undefeated, but we're just tearing each other apart. We're eating up what they're feeding us, and we're allowing this to happen. And, with the whole Kavanaugh thing, like, they're talking about false accusations and stuff like that, and I'm like, well, what makes you think it's false? Until it goes to trial and there's actually a real definitive investigation done, which was not done, we'll never know. But I'm not saying he's guilty. I'm not saying he's not guilty. But myself being a victim, I tend to listen to the victim before I listen to the victimizer. And I just wait until I hear all the evidence. And automatically people, and it's generally people that support Trump, they think, well, you're against this person because Trump's the one who elected him to be on this council. No, that's not it at all. Like, I'm just going by what I've heard. And, there are dirty people out there trying to keep people down and lying and everything like this. But we're talking about a doctor and like 45 other women that have come forward. And, I don't know. It's just, I don't know. I think we're going to a really, really sad state in our lives as Americans, and it's pretty hardcore. And generally I don't talk about politics, but that was one thing, like, that really bothered me. And he did get voted in, which is all fair and good, I suppose, but, why didn't they do a real investigation? It feels like it's more of a cover-up than an investigation. I don't know if you're privy to any of that information, but to me it just makes me sad because we should be progressing in life instead of digressing, and I feel like we are digressing all the time instead of evolving. We're not evolving like we should, and as soon as we think we are evolving, we're just set back another 10 or 15 years, or 20 or 25 years, on certain things. Yeah.
I definitely do think that there are things going on within the government that are meant to keep people down. I mean, it's no secret that our government has been very shifty and, has done like acid tests and, other tests and things on the public. And there's programs like MKUltra that did occur and was covered up, and they have now come out and been like, yes, we did do this. Yes, we did lie about it. Yes, we did destroy all the information. Yes, we're probably still doing it. And I definitely do think that disinformation and separation of people is being used on a mass scale to control people. Because if you can take the 99% of people and then cause issues directly to them within their interpersonal connections, such as with a very divisive election or with officials that we know that like a lot of people are going to be very for and a lot of people are going to be very against, it is going to keep people from having conversations that move forward, because we aren't having a lot of discussions as a society right now in America with respect and with using logic and with using facts. It's all very emotionally driven. And I do think that is definitely being weaponized and being used to keep people from expanding and from moving up in consciousness and from being of a higher plane.
And I feel like, there's something that we should be paying attention to. Like, there was the closure of the Sunstar, the sun base in New Mexico, I believe it was. And, everybody was gone. All the buildings were closed down. There was a couple doors left open, but they were saying it was because there was a pedophile or something in the area. And people are going up there and investigating on their own. Go ahead.
What they were saying, the official statement is a janitor there had been looking at child porn on one of the laptops when he was cleaning at night, and that's why they shut it down. But yeah, I do think it is interesting that they did shut it down right as there were some anomalies being detected and things like that. And it does seem, with the information that's come out and what I've seen, it does look kind of like a cover-up.
Yeah, they have Nibiru and whatever the other terms for it are, and they shut that one down, and I think they shut down several others. And when have you ever heard of a pedophile being found somewhere and they're shutting down a whole district or county or whatever? They don't do that. They don't care enough to do that. Like, kids are raped, people are raped all the time, their souls are killed they don't do anything about it, really. They don't shut down the post office. They don't shut down all these working amenities. They just allow it to continue. And to me, it's just a BS story. Like, you know, look at this hand while the other hand's doing this, or don't look behind the curtain. It just seems like a lot of BS to me, and like a cover-up. And like you were saying, different people that have their own scopes and technology and such in their own homes that are researching these things are finding these crazy huge anomalies by the sun. You can see all these large round spheres, and I think they do kind of charge from the solar energy that comes off of it. But they shut it down, and they shut down several other starports, and so it was pretty interesting. And then when they said it was because of a pedophile, I'm just like, I call BS. Like, this is not, no, you guys never do this, ever does this happen. Yeah. So that was just the stupidest story that they can come up with to why they closed that down.
Yeah, there isn't a lot of precedent for entire areas being shut down like that for an incident such as that. It usually, if it is taken care of, it's just that person was arrested, everyone went home that day, if that. Historically, there hasn't been a lot of entire shutdowns like that haven't led later, 50, 60, 70 years later, to a freedom of information request and a whole process that led to revealing a cover-up.
Yeah, I think it was a lot more than what they were saying, because it just doesn't add up. Like, this story does not make sense. And to me, common sense prevails, and yeah, there's not a whole lot of common sense there. And it was funny because I was watching this one video of a guy that had gone up there, and he's looking through the windows and trying to get through a door because he heard that there was a door open that went into one of the main labs and offices, and he came to this door, and right on top of the trash was an X-Files DVD set right there, and he's like, is this some sort of message? Which I don't know if it was, but it was pretty funny because it was just kind of all tying in together. But yeah, people were just up there investigating, like tons of people going up there one after the other, and as soon as this guy goes out, he finds like 3 or 4 more people coming in, and they're all talking about it, how they've been around there and been checking it out. But Rano in the chat room says, hello, Terra. So Jess in the chat room is saying, what about the shift? Like, so after your out-of-body experience at a very young age, what was your next paranormal experience? Was it some sort of time shift or time loop, or was it something else?
So let me think for a second. I do have a time loop story, but that was fairly recent, maybe a year and a half ago. But I think the next experience that I can recall very clearly was I was living in Durango, Colorado at this point, at a neighborhood called Whispering Pines. I think now they've called it Hermosa Hill Condominiums or something. It's just up past Honeyville, towards kind of north, kind of towards Purgatory.
I actually used to go to your house because I'm friends with your mom.
Yeah, she was telling me that before the show, actually.
Yeah, she's so awesome. I love your mom. She's amazing. You're so lucky.
She is. I think she's actually listening tonight.
Hi, Nay.
Which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
Hi, Mom. But we were living up there, and this story actually does involve her. And I must have been 6 or 7. And the way our balcony was set up in our apartment, we could see this kind of rock wall at the end of kind of the parking lot. And at the top of it, there's just some plants and whatever, and above that there's some houses. But there's this rock wall. And there were these 3 men there, just, you know, like in leather jackets, just talking and smoking cigarettes. And I was like, that's kind of interesting. Like, Mom, look at those men. Like, it's kind of late. Why are they out there like that? Because people usually just smoke on their porches. And she was looking out there, and she was like, "What? I don't see what you're talking about." And my cousin Alicia, Krista's daughter, because you know Krista, was my age. We're a week apart in birth. And she was there at the time, and she looked out. And she was like, "Oh, no, I see them. I definitely do see them." And we're talking about these men who are just kind of shooting the breeze, talking, smoking their cigarettes. And none of our parents could see them. And so that experience happened kind of frequently. And I never really thought much about it until years and years later. I had forgotten about the experience. And we're still living in that neighborhood. And my younger brother, I have 2 younger brothers. One of my younger brothers, Jesse, was looking out the balcony. And he started talking about these men that no one else could see. out there smoking. And I didn't remember at the time, and I was like, there's nothing there. You're scaring me. You need to stop. And later I called my cousin Alicia because we talk fairly frequently, and I was talking to her about it, and she was like, Tara, I can't believe you don't remember seeing the men. And we started talking about it, and the more we were talking about it, the more I was remembering, oh, yeah, I used to see them too. So that's kind of the next earliest instance I can remember of something strange happening.
Well, that's funny because now that you mention it, like I would go up and stay with my sister Sarah. Do you remember Sarah?
I do.
Okay. I would go up and stay with her, especially after Fabian was murdered there right in front of her apartment. And I would see and feel different things. And I do remember seeing those guys. And I thought that they were real because, you know, usually when you see a figure that is not really there, it's just an apparition or a ghost or a spirit or whatever you'd like to call it. You couldn't see through them. They looked like they were full formed, but they were out of place. Like, who are these guys? But you're so busy with everything else that's going on, or I was, that I really didn't pay much attention to it. But I do remember seeing them just standing across the way, sitting there smoking and cutting up, you know? You couldn't really hear what they were saying or anything because it was just kind of jarbled or whatever. Maybe they were talking really quiet or something. But that was so cool. Like, I didn't remember that until you had mentioned it. That place is so heavy with activity.
Whispering Pines, oh, definitely. I definitely do have a few stories of some very strange things that happened up there that a lot of people saw. That's really cool that you saw those same men, because now that's 4 different people who have experienced that same phenomena. So that's really interesting. I wonder if that still goes on, if those guys are still smoking up there.
Yeah, and it makes me wonder, who are they and what are they doing? And we should go investigate. Like, I have all kinds of tools and stuff like that. I'd like to know their story and why they're there and what's going on. Is it residual or is it intelligent?
We definitely should. That's a very interesting question. Just because of the way it happened and the way I saw it one way and Alicia saw it the same way and my younger brother saw it the same way and you saw it the same way, I do think it's probably residual. But, you know, I don't have any evidence for that. That's just what I think. Mm-hmm. Because it would make sense because they're always just kind of there in the same spot, doing the same thing, just with each other.
Yeah, and they are. They're just out of place. I think they're, like, back in, I don't know if it's the 70s or 80s or something, but back in that time, perhaps they were coming back from a party or something in Durango and got in a car accident and were just hanging out at home like they usually would. And just continue to do that occasionally because they're not always there, but occasionally you would see them. And I'm kind of an introvert. Like, I don't go out and try to socialize with people unless I'm, you know, at a bar and really buzzed. Then I'll talk to anybody. But, you know,
I'm very much the same way.
Yeah, so I didn't go up and try to talk to them or socialize or anything, but I did notice them. And it did seem kind of weird, like, but maybe it was just a different crowd because there were so many different crowds up there in that area. So many, it was so diverse as far as people and cultures and such. So yeah, that's very interesting. That is so cool that you brought that up because now I remember it. It just triggered my mind.
Yeah, that actually is really cool. And that's kind of a cool kind of synchronicity that I saw it and forgot. And then my brother brought it up to me. And then you saw it and forgot, and I brought it up to you. That's kind of a cool kind of thing where, I don't know, I just find that interesting that it happened the same way 2 times.
Oh, well, Jess is, well, it's not Jess. It's your mom coming through Jess's link. But she said that the kids could see Fabian outside the window. Do you remember that? What was he doing?
I remember one time, this was a few years after I went downstairs. We're having a party kind of up at my mom's house. You know, the adults are all there. They're drinking. I'm like 12 or 13, so I'm sneaking alcohol, and it's whatever. I smoke. My mom doesn't know yet. Sorry, Mom. I know you're listening. And I went downstairs. We live in a different apartment at this time, closer to where he was actually murdered. And I went downstairs, and I'm smoking a cigarette, and there was a guy sitting on a car. And my mom, I think someone else told me the same story happened to them. But there was a guy sitting on a car, and he was all in shadow. It was dark. I couldn't really see him. And then we just kind of chatted, and I smoked, and then I went upstairs, and I kind of started asking around. I was like, who's the guy down there? Like, he knows everyone. Like, we talked about everyone. Like, who's that guy down there? And no one could ever figure it out. And it was later someone told me that same story happened to them. And about halfway through the story, they realized it was Fabian.
That is so crazy because that was a sad day. Like, that guy that killed him was supposed to be a pastor or, a man of God. And he was very, very nice to some people, but he was very, very mean and aggressive to others. And I think he had some sort of jealousy going on with Fabian. And I remember him saying to him, "I want your papers." And everybody was just chalking it up to, well, Fabian is Hispanic, so maybe he's talking about, his papers being in the country. Is he really a legalized person or not? But really what he was talking about was his death papers. And everybody was sitting out there that day, and they were having one of their bump contests. Like, they'd play the stereos as loud as they could, and they'd bump their favorite song, and everybody was having a good time. And then he came up and just stabbed him, basically gutted him, and Sarah tried to save him, like, and we'd gone over it in our minds over and over again, like, should we have called 911, whatever, but it was so far out there, it would have taken so long. And so she figured, had she just taken him to the hospital, she could save him, but she couldn't. He just basically bled to death in the back of her car, which was so tragic. And then about a week or two later, she found out she was pregnant with his son, which she named after him as Fabian. But it was so sad. He was such a bright light in the world, and he was such an amazing, happy person. And, he had his head on his shoulders quite well, and he would ask people, how are you? How's your life going? And he really did care. But yeah, that was so sad. Like, I don't even understand why that guy did that. And he had his own wife, and he had his own child that he should have been thinking about instead of taking this person's life. But, there are dark entities that do take over us. I don't know if that's something that happened to him, because it was so out of character for this guy. But I do know that this guy was sleeping around on his wife as well. So that was crazy, and very sad. Like, such a tragic loss for so many people. So sad. But it is amazing that he's still hanging out there. And on that note, we have to go to our first break. You guys don't go anywhere, and we'll be right back.
The first annual Caribou Paracon is happening September 28th to 30th in the 108 Mile Ranch, British Columbia. Brought to you by the Canadian Society of Questers and Spaced Out Radio. Come listen to our featured speaker, Grant Cameron, along with Elizabeth Anglin, Paisley Town, Mike Moran, Eric Cooper, and more. It's a 3-day supernatural adventure at the Spruce Hills Resort and Spa. Tickets for the weekend are $150 Canadian. The Caribou Paracon, celebrating everything paranormal.
Are you tired of being blocked, shadow banned, or placed in jail for simply posting your thoughts on social media? Social Media Freedom can take care of that for you. Social Media Freedom is the newest and one of the best free new apps that allows you the freedom to post what you want, when you want. It takes seconds to download from your app store. Come join the tribe at Social Media Freedom. It's time to set yourself free.
A timepiece is a reflection of who you are, and what better way to show off the real you than with an Escape watch? Escape is a lifestyle brand accessorizing your days and nights. Choose to escape and create the life of discovery that you deserve. Dream, play, unite with your own personalized Escape watch. Head to escapewatches.com. There is no time like the present to enjoy your escape. Use promo code SMF2017 for your 20% discount today.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7, with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
The Call of the Wild is in Vancouver. The Moose Vancouver is one of the hottest bars and restaurants in the city. Open until 2 a.m. nightly, the Moose will rock you like a hurricane all night long. Great food with everything on the menu at $6.95 near the corner of Nelson and Granville. Get your horns up and come rock with us. The Moose Vancouver, the official rocking bar of Spaced Out Radio.
Are you an experiencer? Have you had run-ins with strange creatures you can't explain? ETs, Dogman, Bigfoot, werewolves? They're enough to scare the daylights out of anyone. Hi there, I'm Butch Witkowski from your 4-Cop. And on the last Monday of every month, you can listen to me and the host, Dave Scott, talk about the weird and the strange being reported on Spaced Out Radio. I'm going to bring my investigations and sources, you bring your experiences, and we'll figure out the rest together. Strange Days on Spaced Out Radio. Come tune us in at spacedoutradio.com.
You know, it's hard being the bad man of ufology, but that's just the way that I like it. This is Chris George Zuger, and I'll be hanging out with Dave Scott and SOR scientist Chris Cogswell for Reality Paranormal, the second Wednesday of every month. And our job is to break it down and come to conclusions as to what is really going on in the supernatural world. I'd love for you to join us and bring your questions for us to investigate right here on Spaced Out Radio.
There's news, and there's the encounter. This is Spaced Out Radio News Director Everett Thiemer inviting you to check out The Encounter. Our half-hour news segment every Monday through Friday night is different compared to what you're used to. Our goal is to bring you the weird, strange, and interesting stories the mainstream tends to leave out, and stories that will make you scratch your head in disbelief. The Encounter can also be found at spacedoutradio.com and on our Facebook page, SOR The Encounter. Come give us a read.
Do you want to know what's really going on in your world? Do you have questions about who you can trust in the mainstream media? Then look no further than the Rebel Planet. Come get the straight answers right here at spacedoutradio.com. Join me, Jamie Sexton, creator of Rebel Planet News, as I fill you in on the stories behind the stories. All you truth seekers, be sure to tune in to Rebel Planet on spacedoutradio.com the third Thursday of every month.
Hi there, this is Dave Scott from Spaced Out Radio, and I want you to come on a nightly journey. Starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, every Monday through Friday, you can come hang out with me and the other space travelers. We have it all from Carl the Alien bouncing on by to those misfit gnomes causing havoc. It's 3 hours of fun and entertainment on those topics the mainstream really doesn't want to touch. Come get all paranormal with us at spacedoutradio.com, and together, my friends, along with our resident guitar god Bumblefoot, we own the night.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com.
Tonight's show and topic of discussion do not necessarily reflect the opinion of Spaced Out Radio, SOR Media, or its hosts. Listener discretion is advised. Here comes the second hour of Spaced Out Sunday with host Tessa N Thomas. Subscribe to us on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio. And you can follow Tessa on Twitter at TessaTNT. Now, back to the show.
Hey guys, welcome back, and it's so great to have you listening tonight. So tonight we have Terra Goens, and she is an amateur paranormal investigator, and she also delves into the realm of parapsychology. Terra, welcome back. It's so great to have you.
Hi, it's so good to be back.
Okay, so when we left off, we were talking about, the three guys smoking outside, and then Fabian appearing, which I have never heard these stories before, because after Sarah moved out, I really didn't go up there anymore, and so that, it just kind of, I don't know, it makes my heart warm. I know he's around because I felt him, but I'm just not, I haven't seen him, I've just felt him, but that's so awesome that you guys did, and that you actually got to communicate with him.
Yeah, that was a really interesting experience because he did mean a lot to a lot of people. And I think at the time, because I was so young, I just didn't realize how cool it actually was that I did get to speak with him again. And he's definitely around. I mean, I hear stories of people up there who remember still stick weed in the sidewalk cracks for him and leave cigarettes out.
That's cool. Like some sort of like tribute to him. That's awesome. So, moving on from there, what was your next paranormal experience? Like, we are in October. This is the realm of Halloween, and I'm so excited because it's my favorite holiday of the year. Yeah. I love Halloween. What was your next experience?
So from this point on in my experiences, it was so many and so frequent that it's kind of hard to place a timeline on. Let's kind of talk about Whispering Pines as a place for a second.
Okay.
Because I've had a lot of experiences there. It was a very haunted place, and there were a lot of weird things. I mean, there was a time when some of the landlords there were running a cult. Like,
oh, dang.
It's just a very weird place. So I remember in apartment 77, where I lived when I saw the men in the coats smoking, and I had 2 different apartments there, and that was the first. That apartment scared the life out of me growing up. I still haven't gone back into it. I never would. Because there was this kind of entity there that really was just very vicious. I remember I'd see shadow figures, and then things would like break immediately after seeing it, and a lot of it was just very energetic. It was just, there'd be just a dark feeling, just a bad, scary feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And one instance I remember specifically of something more physical happening was my dad was gone at work, or he was doing whatever. And my first younger brother was a baby. The second one, I don't think had been born yet. And my mom wanted to go outside and smoke, and she didn't want either of us to go with her because she's been a mom for like 6 years at this point. Like, she doesn't get any time alone. She's like, just let me go. I
need a break.
You can't follow me out here. Yeah, so she went outside, and I was like trying to follow her, and I was like, no, you can't leave me alone in here, because there was just this very menacing presence coming from the back bedroom up towards the living room, and I could just feel it. And it just felt horrible. It was blood chilling. I don't know how else to describe it.
Yeah, and that's what I was
feeling. It just felt
feeling.
like it was very old.
When I was up there, like, when I'd stay with my sister Sarah, I could not ever sleep. Like, I might get an hour or 2 of sleep each night, but there was some sort of not nice energy that was keeping me up all night, and so I'd go out and I'd look for other people, and I don't know if you remember Sarah's sister Gabby. She lived down the way a ways on the end over where your aunt lived. That wasn't your aunt. Kippen lived, and I'd go down there, and Gabby would come out, and I was like, hey, let's do something weird and crazy. And so we take sidewalk chalk and write different notes in front of different people's buildings, and I remember somebody was having sex that night very loudly, and so we're like, freaky deaky sex world, and, with an arrow pointing to their house, and doing different stuff.
I remember
like
that, actually.
Yeah, trying to lighten the mood in the area, because it was so dark and so, like, present, and trying to impede on your energy, and it was just like trying to fight that, trying to do something different and not let it, drain me of this energy, because it was not allowing me to sleep, not allowing me to rest, and it was just taking that. Everybody else was sleeping just fine, But yeah, we'd find different weird things to do to lighten the energy. But I do remember feeling that like there was something there that wasn't quite right, and I'd like to find out if there was some sort of old base or maybe some native camp or something that was there, because even in Vallecito, where the Utes used to be, and then the white man, basically kicked them out, more southerly, and tried to, make the land their own, and then the government came in and filled a lot of people's land in with Vallecito Lake, and the last one to get out was the one that owned all these cabins for Vallecito. I can't think of the name, but it's like a resort, Vallecito Resort. And they still have cabins there, but they're just moved up more north. But that guy sold out last minute, so he got really gypped on the price. And because he did put up such a fight. But, I mean, our government just messes us over so many times. And, not just the natives, but us. And we all have to really go through that. But I do feel bad for the natives, and I do feel like there's so much tragedy and turmoil up in places like Vallecito and Whispering Pines and stuff like that, and it makes me wonder if it's some sort of curse or something because of what white man did to chase them out and take away their livelihood and their lives that they've worked so hard for all these years, and just, basically acted like it was nothing because AKA they're savages, which is so ignorant to me. Like, to me, they were more advanced than us because they have this certain knowledge of the earth and how to coexist with it and protect it. And we come in and just rape and pillage it and, use it up, and we continue to do it today. But do you feel like there's any sort of curse or is there any lore or anything like that out there about that?
So about Whispering Pines specifically, I haven't been able to dig anything up. I remember, so I've done a lot of research about up there, and I remember Krista Atencio, Alicia's mother, who lived up there for a while, had done a lot of research about the area because when she was living there, she was like, okay, so this is all pretty messed up. Like, what happened here to make it like this? And she couldn't find anything past the 70s. There's nothing on it. Whatever happened there has been kind of scrubbed from the records as far as I can find. But, maybe one of the listeners out there can find something else about it, because I'd be very, very interested to hear about that.
Well, yeah, and so many things are covered up. Like, they're not going to record horrid and terrible things. Maybe there's personal records from somebody that did have some sort of conscience and kept that record, but it's not going to be public knowledge. Like, you have to find it through different families, I believe. But I'm really interested to find out, and especially with those three guys and even the darker energy that has been there and what's been going on there and kind of feeding upon people and driving people to do crazy, insane things, because there were so many insane things that happened up there. Do you agree with that?
Oh, I definitely do. It was kind of like living in like a city ghetto, but here. Like, it was just so violent, and there was just a lot of drugs and just a lot of bad things that happened up there that was really disproportionate for our area.
Yeah, it was pretty weird. So what's your, next experience after that? Like, I want to hear all your ghost stories. Do you recollect what your next paranormal experience was after that? After the three guys and Fabian?
There's actually a little bit more to that story I was telling before. So my mom shut the door. She didn't want me to come out and smoke with her, and she was holding it shut. And I remember just looking, like, from the door back to the hallway, and the hallway suddenly just went black. Like, from the entrance to the hallway all the way through the rest of the house was just this thick, palpable darkness. That I couldn't understand why it was there. And I remember just screaming and just banging on the door and just not knowing what to do, because what is that? You know, to a child, I couldn't even understand, like, oh, this is like a spirit. This is something happening. I was just like, what is that? Why? So that was kind of the most aggressive thing I remember happening in that apartment. I think God, what was the next thing I remember?
Well, I do agree with that. Like,
okay,
you know, sometimes when spirits or entities try to form, it can be a white mass or it can be a dark mass. And just because it's dark doesn't necessarily make it bad. It's just whatever they can draw from to feed that energy to appear to us. But you get that feeling within you, like that gut instinct, and I implore everyone to listen to that, because to me, it's never led me astray. Like, my gut is always right. So if you felt like it was bad, I'm sure it was. But sometimes spirits do appear as a dark figure. Sometimes you'll see it out of the corner of your eye or as a cloud or whatnot.
Yeah, it was definitely a very terrifying experience. Like, the fear was very palpable and very real. But I actually just remembered the next most interesting thing that happened to me, if you'd like to hear that story. Okay, so this is up at Durango West 1. My Aunt Krista had a house up there for a while. She's had a few houses around that area, but this is the first one I remember. And so my cousin Alicia and I, and probably a few of the other cousins, just as kids, were like hanging out in the house. My mom and Krista were chatting. I don't remember why we were there. It was a birthday party or something. And there was this cabinet in the living room. And I remember Alicia and I could hear something strange in the cabinet. And we were like, well, what's over here? And I was probably like 8 or 9. And we walked over and we opened the cabinet, and there was a little girl in the cabinet. And by this point, we were already like very aware of spirituality and ghosts and things like that, because just our parents were very conscious of it, and we'd already had a lot of experiences together and separately. And so immediately we registered, like, this isn't a living girl, and we don't know what to do about it. And she's just kind of there, and I remember she had white hair, and I think her eyes were red, if I'm remembering correctly. And we went and we got our parents, because we were like, you need to do something about this. Who is this girl? And so my mom and Krista comes and look, and they're like, okay, kids, well, there's nothing here. And they just kind of dismiss it as us playing.
Mm-hmm.
And we're like, no, there's this little girl. And then over the next few months or year or so, Alicia and I continued to see this girl all the time whenever we were up there. And I remember one time we were kind of just being kids, and we're like, oh, we're going to go mess with the ghost. We're just going to go mess with the ghost. And Alicia pushed me into this closet in the bathroom. And I remember being scared and wanting to get out.
Yeah.
And then I just remember Alicia opening the door, and she was crying. And I was like, well, why are you crying? You locked me in a closet. And she was like, no, Tara, I didn't lock you in the closet. I shut the door, and then you opened it, and you said some really weird things to me. And I was like, what did I say? And she was like, you just said I was going to die. You said my cat was going to die. You just said some really weird things to me. And she was really just shaken by the experience, and so was I. And nothing really ever came of that. I want the story to have a good ending, but that's kind of where that left off, is we had that experience, and we were like, okay, well, we can never mess with the ghost again. Because there's just this element of missing time to it that makes it kind of a little more frightening and a little more sinister.
So when you think back on it, were her eyes red? Like, was it busted petechiae in her eyes? Perhaps she was choked to death, or was it just the color of her eyes were red, kind of like a demonic presence?
I think it could have been that the blood vessels in her eyes were burst. I think it was that, because it's such a young memory that I don't know exactly what's been exaggerated by time in my mind. You know, like, where the newer experiences I've had in life, I'm like, I have a better handle on what exactly happens. With that one, it's kind of fuzzy, because I was a child, you know.
Yeah, but that image is just, like, burned into your head, you know. You saw what you saw.
Oh, definitely.
Like, the things that I've seen through my life, I can't forget. You know, you can't unsee something. So, yeah, like, you kind of have to just, like, focus in on that, zoom in, and do different things. But, yeah, it is very scary, especially as a child. Like, the world is scary enough as it is. But adding that to it is just even more insane.
Yeah, those experiences there were positive experiences, but a lot of them were very jarring and frightening as a child. Like, I didn't quite know how to deal with that.
So, BTO in the chat room is asking, are the Four Corners an interdimensional vortex? What are your thoughts? I think it's more spiritual than anything, but there are different dimensions, so I guess you could refer to it as interdimensional. What are your thoughts?
I think that the idea of spiritual beings and ghosts and the idea of interdimensional travel are very linked to each other. I think that how things move through existence is through a period of dimensions. So I would say probably both, in my opinion, just because I link the two together so synonymously that I think it is really the same phenomenon. We're looking at it through different lenses of perception.
Well, we do have so much activity, not just spiritual, but alien and UFO. I've actually seen an alien orb in my backyard only 20 feet away from my house, and it was about 3 or 4 feet in diameter and about the same distance off of the ground, and it was moving at a slow and walking pace. And to me it appeared like a ball with fire inside of it going in like a clockwise fashion, and you can see the yellow, the red, and the orange just flowing through it over the top and down under and around again. And I saw it, and I opened the door, and I stepped 1 foot out, and then I paused, and I'm like, okay, I don't know what this thing is. Is it going to kill me? Like, I have 4 kids. Well, at this point, I only had 3 kids. I have 3 kids to take care of, and so I stepped back in, I closed the door, and I called my family over, which was my husband and my 2 older daughters, and I was like, are you seeing this? And to me and Mackenzie and Nova, it appeared to be this ball with fire, liquid fire within it. To Vern, it looked like a ball with a bat in it that was glowing and flapping its wings at a very slow pace. So it was weird that it appeared differently to us, but it kind of makes sense as far as the mind control and other things that they can do. Especially when probing and doing all these other things, like they can make you feel pleasure instead of pain, and happiness instead of fear, and all kinds of other things. But that was crazy, and we saw it 2 months before that, and it appeared smaller because it was higher up in the sky, and the girls had seen it from the back seat. We're coming back from the motorcycle rally, and then I stopped coming off the Rainbow Road onto 160B in Bayfield, and got out of my car and was looking up at it like, what the hell is this? And Nova's like, can you please just get in the car? Please just take us home. I just want to go home. And so I did. But that's twice that I saw this ball, aka like Foo Fighter is what it resembled, except for it wasn't glowing green. It was like liquid fire within. And then I also got pictures of other alien craft from my backyard as well, up near the moon and the clouds and stuff, which I've shared on our Four Corners Paranormal Investigations website, so people can check it out. But I mean, I've witnessed these things. It took me quite a while. Like, I would hear my dad talking about it, and I didn't push it off as if, like, I don't believe it, but I knew that there's a possibility, like, anything's possible. So I kept my mind open to it, but then I finally got to experience it around the year of 2013. It was pretty insane. Have you experienced any UFO or any other things like that in this area?
I definitely have. I've had a few experiences. I've kind of done a lot in my life to push that sort of avenue away, because I do believe I have some sort of repressed memory or something going on that does cause a lot of fear around this subject for me, and I've been trying to work on it and maybe be more receptive to the messages they may have for us in the last couple years. But I have had a few sightings, all of the first kind that I can recall, just lights in the sky, weird movements. I remember one time I was out back on my job. I worked at McDonald's at the time. I was like 17, 18, young. And there was this light that I thought at first was maybe like a visible planet like we have right now with Mars, or like a bright star. And it was the middle of the night, and I was smoking a cigarette, and this star, or whatever it was, started to move in a very weird insect-like way. It was going fast and just moving in a way that I knew didn't make sense. So I immediately connect that. And I was like, oh, a UFO. Hello. And one of my coworkers, one of the kitchen people came out and to smoke his cigarette. And I said, look at that, Otis. Do you see it? And he looked at it for a minute and he was like, well, that's really weird. And I was like, yeah, what do you think that is? And he was like, I think I don't care what they are or what they want as long as they don't come over here. And we both just kind of went inside. So I've had a few experiences like that of just nothing extreme, nothing like what you saw. That's very interesting. Just experiences of the first kind.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy, and I just wonder, what are they doing here? Like, this is little tiny petty Bayfield, a.k.a. Bayberry, Colorado. Like, what are they doing? Why are they going through this horse field in the back of my backyard? And I don't know. I think they're just collecting data. What are people doing? How are they spending their time? You know, what's just basic data that they could gather about us? Crow in the chat room is asking, what's the ley lines like there? Any intersecting? And I do believe we have a lot. Have you heard anything about that or read anything about that?
So I haven't heard a whole lot about ley lines, but I've looked a little bit into it. And from what I remember, I do believe we do have like a pretty high volume of ley lines. It's not something I'm extremely versed on, but I do believe we do have activity with that, and I do know that that would amp up EMF fields and the opportunity for activity to happen.
Yeah, I've heard of different ley lines in like Fruita, New Mexico, and different other areas, and there does seem to be a big spike in paranormal activity in these places, and it's not always good. But it's very interesting, and I'd like to visit one of these places.
Oh, I'm sure that would be very interesting, actually.
Well, Ellie is saying, don't forget about our skinwalker stories. But I was kind of wanting to go in progression with you, with your different paranormal experiences. Was your next one a skinwalker incident, or did you have something else before your encounter with skinwalkers?
So my skinwalker incidents were actually both within the last couple years. So it's not the next thing I remember, but they're definitely in there. I do have two pretty good stories. But let me think. The next really extreme thing I remember... Let's skip ahead a few years. This actually might be a skinwalker type scenario. I'm not quite sure. It does have to do with maybe some Native American mythology. Mm-hmm. I was at Sundance because my Uncle Carlos is a Sundancer, and, you know, we go out to support him and help cut the cattails and do all of the things you do for the Sundancers. And there was this field right across from our shade house, because every year you build a shade house that you kind of live in. And in this field, there was this massive tree. It took two of us to wrap our arms around it. It was a very old, old tree. And so all the kids the first night were like, let's go play tag in the field with the tree. And I just remember the field having a very off feeling to it and not knowing really what was going on with that. And I walked over and I felt like I was in kind of this trance. And I touched the tree, and it just felt strange. It made my fingers numb. And a few other people later, my cousins, told me they had a similar experience with the tree. And at the same time, while we're all running around this field just trying to be kids and have fun, none of it made sense, the layout of the field. Like, you'd look down and the ground would be solid, and then you'd step and you'd be in a hole. And it was just very changing and very fluid and very confusing in a lot of ways to all of us. And so we didn't think too much of it. We were like, well, that was weird. And we went back and had our dinner and did whatever it was we were doing. And so a few hours later, it's dark. My Aunt Krista is sleeping in her tent. My little cousins Gabriel and Arius are sleeping in their tent. And it's Alicia, who's my age, my cousin Sean, who's a year younger than me, and I all sitting around the fire, just kind of talking and enjoying the night, roasting marshmallows, doing whatever we were doing. And there was this weird sound. It was like, my Aunt Krista described it as like a creepy goat.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a pretty good explanation of it. It did sound like a creepy, like, goat noise, but, like, just off, like... And it was the same sound every time, like it was being played off of a tape. And we were like, that's weird, ignoring it. Like, there's other families all over here. Like, it's probably nothing. Someone's watching a video. Something is happening that is normal. And there was this moment of silence that came. For no clear reason, we were all talking, and it felt fine, and suddenly the energy was just tense. And we all kind of got up, and we're looking at the field, and a couple things happened at the same moment. There's this outhouse out there that was about 6 feet tall. And at the same moment that my cousin Alicia said, "Look at that," and pointed, some unseen force just flipped me around. I just didn't see it. I just turned around. It was like, it felt like, you're not supposed to see this.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just turned. And I turned back around and I was like, what did you guys see? And of course, Alicia and Sean are completely freaking out. They're like, what was that? And I asked them, I calmed them down a little bit, and they told me that there was something in the field right behind the outhouse, like kind of off to the side and behind it, that was like a cat. And then it just stepped up into this giant creature that was taller than this outhouse, that was kind of like a man and a goat, and it was just very strange to them. They were obviously shocked. And at the same moment that they're explaining that to me, suddenly our cousin Aries is out of her tent. And we would have heard her getting dressed. She was fully in her pajamas when she went to bed, but she was standing on the outside of the tent. We didn't hear the zipper, and she was in full clothes and shoes, and she just started going towards the field. And we were like, that's not okay. You can't go over there. And we're trying to get her to stop, and she was just not herself. She was just erratic. She was just angry. She was yelling and being like, get off me, get off me. And Sean and Alicia drug her back to her tent, made her go back to bed, and we just saged the entire camp. And so we didn't know what to make of that. We were obviously too afraid to go to bed, and we stayed up for quite a few more hours, just kind of burning sage and talking and not really knowing what to do. And so finally we did fall asleep, and the next day we all agreed, okay, we have to tell the elders, like, we're at a spiritual gathering. There's spiritual things happening, and we saw that and experienced that. Something weird happened to Arius. So we told some of our parents and grandparents, and they were like, okay, well, we're going to seal the edge of your camp and just no more in the field. No one goes in the field ever again. And for the rest of the weekend, we did hear weird things. There were some kind of strange experiences, but nothing like that. There is more to the story that maybe I could convince my cousin to come on and tell later, that happened a few years later that I wasn't there for. That's pretty interesting. But that was a pretty strange experience. I don't really know what that was.
Yeah, I had read earlier, because I was looking up all kinds of things on skinwalkers, and because you hear different things from different people, and growing up in this area, you hear the native lore from people and experiences that people have had. But I was reading, if you make eye contact with a skinwalker, it could take you over. So that could kind of explain what your friend or your cousin was going through. You know, that individual taking over their consciousness and what they're doing, their activities. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah, I'm not sure what was up with that. It could have been that, except she was in the tent for the entire sighting of the being. However, something we don't know about could have happened earlier in that field. We all did go through some really strange things in the field, and talking to her about it a couple months ago, actually, she doesn't remember a lot of what it was like playing in the field. She just remembers that it was weird, and that she kept feeling really called to that tree, and that it felt kind of wrong, but really magnetic, is how she described it to me.
Like pulling her in?
Yeah. Like, just something making her want to go to it.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I was born in Arkansas, and then I lived in Miami, Florida for a while, and then back to Arkansas for a vacation with my grandparents, but then my dad never sent for us. And then our aunt and uncle came and got us and took us to Washington State, which we've had weird experiences in all states. And then my uncle, being a nurse, wanted to move to Cortez. And like Andrew, the truck driver in the chat room, is saying, Four Corners, Devil's Highway. It used to be called 666. Now, isn't it 160 over there as well? Or I'm not sure what the name of it is.
Yeah, it's 160 up here.
Okay. But living out near Sleeping Ute Mountain was my first skinwalker experience. I had heard other people's experiences, and it was generally human form. But for me, I'm living in this trailer out at the base of Sleeping Ute, and I would go outside to smoke. And sitting on the back porch one night, I see these yellow glowing eyes, and they're just coming closer and closer, and then I see more and more and more and more. And they wouldn't come within the realm of the back porch light. They would just stay on the outskirts of the light, and just, you could see them breathing, like the movement in their eyes, and they're just watching me. And so I just threw my cigarette down and went back inside, and I didn't smoke for the rest of the night. The next one I saw was further south into Arizona on the way to Phoenix. And I think it was before Kayenta, and we saw this truck on the side of the highway, a red and white truck. The door was open, the internal light was on, and you didn't see anybody around it, nobody flagging or changing a tire or anything like that. And then about 100 yards down the road, there was this really, really pale-looking, tall, blonde, human-looking thing, but her arms were really long, like her hands went well below her knees, and her stomach was so protruded that her shirt was up and her button was undone, and her pants were kind of open because her stomach was just so huge, like she had eaten someone. She wasn't pregnant, she had eaten a person, and she was looking the opposite direction, which I was grateful for because I just didn't want to see the face or make that eye contact. But we all saw it, myself, my husband, and my two daughters, and that really freaked us out. But, I mean, they can take different forms, and mostly it's animal form, but they can take the form of humans, take the face, they can even take the voice. I was reading a story earlier about a guy that was camping, and his friend, he went outside to go pee, he saw his friend in his sleeping bag sleeping. As he's coming back, he hears someone on the other side of camp, and it sounds like his friend, and he's calling for him, and he starts to go near it, and it's calling for him some more, and they're calling back and forth to each other, and then all of a sudden he sees his friend right next to him, and he's like, how did you get on the other side of me? And he told him to be quiet, and he looked really, really, really pale, like he was really freaked out. And then it called again, and it was like, I'm hurt, come help me. And his friends started to drag him back to camp because it does have that magnetism. It pulls you in. Even though you see your friend right here, you're still hearing his voice and you're not sure what the heck is going on. And then it started getting closer and closer, and he said he felt that ache in his legs, like, I need to run right now. I need to get into my tent. Like, your tent's really going to protect you. But it kind of does. It's like you're dwelling your home. Yeah, it was just really weird, and it's weird how they can do that, and they do take human form to try to get you to feel for them or stop for them or, try to empathize with them.
That's very interesting. Your story was pretty scary, actually. I've only encountered them in more animal-like forms the two times I have. But that's very interesting. It's frightening. It's cool to hear about.
Yeah, I've heard stories. One that really came to mind was someone driving along the highway, and they see these two coyotes running, but they're running as fast as the car and darting in and out in front of it, and they call the police, and there's a chase, and they chase them all the way back to this canyon where they can't really get up and go anywhere. And by the time they get to them, they find a male and female together, and they're wearing different like tribal paints on their face and on their body, and kind of holding each other, afraid of what's going to happen. And they call back to the Navajo police base, and they said they didn't break any laws, like they didn't harm anybody or hurt anybody, and they're just practicing their religion. So there was no charges brought upon these people. But I think the ones that do take human form are more evil. I know, or supposedly, to be a skinwalker, you have to take a life. Some it's not intentional because it's during like childbirth or whatnot. Others, they intentionally take a life to get that power. And then I was reading earlier, like you can just recruit somebody, which I'm not sure how true that is, but it is like an old magic that they use. Sometimes it's in a group and sometimes it's just individually. What is your knowledge on that?
I've definitely heard stories like that, and I've heard a lot of different lore. I've heard a lot that it can be a familial connection, that it can be passed down from relative to relative. And I've heard a lot that it can be a curse that's put upon you just by someone who's angry and does witchcraft in your tribe. One really interesting tidbit I did hear from a friend of mine who's a Navajo woman is that they literally just, like a lot of things in the supernatural, feed on fear. And if you aren't afraid of them, if they cannot cause you fear, they can't hurt you or attack you. Mm-hmm. Which is obviously easier said than done, because even with that knowledge, I was very afraid in the scenarios I was in.
Yeah, you just have that
I've
internal primal instinct, like that fear. You can't really control it. When it happens, when it doesn't, you can taper it down, but, they can feed on that. And other entities do as well, that negative energy, the fear, the anger.
Oh, yeah. I feel very much like, going back to Whispering Pines, everything happening there was definitely feeding on dysfunction and anger and depression and just thriving on making people upset. I think there are a lot of beings out there who do that sort of thing and survive in that kind of parasitic way.
They cause people to act differently, to lash out. Like, we've had experiences here recently where all of a sudden there's this rage towards someone for no apparent reason, and you're picturing punching them in the face, and you don't know where it's coming from, and you're seeing these sparkles in your eyes, and you realize something's trying to take you over, and then it goes away because it knows that you found it out. I don't know. And I tell my kids all the time, because my kids are very spiritual as well. They all have their different gifts. Kinsey's like my medicine baby. She's a healer, and she can see things and communicate with things. Nova is more empathic. She can feel what the spirit is feeling and see it. And then Floyd and Lily, they're still really young. Floyd's 6, Lily's 3. But Lily's my past life baby. I know she's had that. But I tell them not to fear it. Like, we're all going to be ghosts someday, right? So why fear it? And generally they're here for a reason. They want to be heard. They need to put a message across. Even if it's something like a skinwalker you don't understand. Like, with that, it's more of, prey and such going on. Like, that's more of a scary thing, because they are basically after you or wanting to get that energy off of you. And they're really good at what they do, because it's just, when you see it, it's insane. Like, you just get that certain energy that does come off of you. But I think educating yourself, kind of running things through your mind, you can empower yourself to get past it. But hopefully they listen. They generally don't. I don't even know why they were born with ears, but...
I think a lot of these more like physical, like skinwalker type experiences, the feeling is very much of like the uncanny valley type sensation, where it's just something that seems so strange. It just always has such a strange nature and appearance to it. It's never like, I don't think I've ever heard a skinwalker story really that feels like something out of a movie or feels like something that you've heard of before, because it's always just very, very strange.
Yeah. It's like, is this really happening? Did I eat something bad? Like, what's going on?
Yeah.
But you just know, like, you're seeing it, and nothing else is going on weird with your sight or anything like that. There's so many different things around here. So you were talking also about time loops. What is your experience with that?
So I've had 2 experiences, one of which was maybe in 2012, just after that whole energetic shift we went through. It was summer, and I was in the living room with my father, and I looked out the window, and it was just snowing. There was like 3 feet of snow on the ground, and it was actively snowing, and I was like, wow, look, it's snowing. And he was like, oh, that's crazy. And I went outside, and as soon as I opened the door, it was just a bright, hot day with just no snow, no clouds in the sky.
Yeah.
It was just such a it threw me off. I walked out there and just felt so surprised, just so shocked. And I went back in, and I was like, Dad, where did the snow go? And he was like, that's strange. Best not think of it again. It was just a very interesting experience. It was cool having someone to corroborate that, because I felt crazy. I was like, am I okay? Why did I see that?
Yeah, that's why when I saw that alien orb, I was like, okay, I could not control my hands. Like, I was so fidgety trying to get my phone open and trying to get it to camera mode. Like, I couldn't do it. And so I was like, just, you guys come here. You got to see this. And it was moving slow enough that they did see it. But it is to kind of, like, I'm not just seeing things. I'm not tripping, going through, things after having a kid or whatever. Like, I have to have somebody else cooperate this and see this. And I had 3 other people able to see it. To one other person, it looked different than all the rest of us. But it's good to get that backup and know that you're not losing your mind. Because a lot of times it is mind-blowing. You're like, am I going crazy? What's happening?
Yeah, it is. Especially since, as we were talking about earlier, it's kind of, these kind of things aren't very talked about. And it's kind of seen as like, oh, you're crazy if you talk about these kind of things. So you do kind of question your own judgment in those situations. Especially with the time loops and things like that. Like, I have another interesting story about that if you want to hear it.
Yeah.
So this was about maybe a year and a half ago. I was in a car with my friend Chelsea, and we were coming up north from kind of near that last gas station before Purgatory.
Mm-hmm.
And we were driving in towards town, and we passed the Iron Horse, which is ironically is where I live now. And we're just kind of talking. The radio's on. Just a normal night. We both work third shift, so we hang out pretty late. It was maybe like 12. And we kept talking, and I noticed it was taking a really long time to get to town. It should have been like 15 minutes, but like 30 or 40 minutes had passed, and we passed the Iron Horse again.
Oh.
And I was like, that's strange. Maybe, like, I must have saw it wrong. I must have saw some other lights and thought it was the Iron Horse. And so we keep kind of talking, and then we pass it again. And I'm finally like, okay, Chelsea, did you notice that we keep passing the Iron Horse? The town isn't, like, we haven't gotten to town. And they were like, I really was hoping that I was wrong about that. And we were kind of just at a loss. We were like, well, what do we do? Do we pull over? You know what? Should we turn around? And we're like, okay, well, let's just see what happens. And we kept driving forward. And we passed it one more time. And we were both just kind of looking at each other and looking out the windows and being like, you know, what is happening? Are we about to see something weird? Why is this happening? It was just very confusing and disorienting. And so finally we did make it to town after that last pass. And we didn't really know what to do about it. And we were thinking about it and talking about it more in detail and being very guarded and careful of our words. Like, are we repeating the same lines of conversation? No. Is the radio repeating the same lines of the podcast we're listening to? No, everything in the car is moving forward as it should be, but everything outside of us was repeating. And for people who don't know this road, it wasn't like we could get turned around, because the only road down here is the highway. There's just the one road, and then little kind of side roads that just go into neighborhoods and have no outlet.
Mm-hmm.
So there was no way we could have gotten turned around. We were just driving in a straight line. And that was very interesting. It was kind of a cool experience.
We've had a couple times driving places where you're in a hurry because you have only 5 minutes to get there, and it's going to actually take you like 10 minutes to get there, and then all of a sudden things do shift, like the song is different, and all of a sudden you have 15 minutes to get there, and you like you said, you look at each other and you're like, what the heck just happened? We just gained 10 minutes. And I don't remember seeing anything differently as far as visually, but it's really weird when you get that leap or loop or whatever it is. That's so weird that you guys kept seeing the Iron Horse repeatedly, because that's when you're going into town. That's the first thing you see, basically, but it's just repeating itself. It's kind of like something keeps taking you back. Did you notice like anything in the sky, or maybe it was just one of those vortexes? Maybe that's what it is.
I'm kind of leaning more towards it being a vortex and just kind of a random anomaly than anything with any sort of significance like that, because we were being very vigilant. We were looking around like, okay, what is happening to make this happen? Is there anything in the sky? Are there creatures on the side of the road? Is there anything in the back of the car? Is there any sort of significance? Like, what are we listening to? What is it talking about? And we couldn't really... We picked our brains for a while. We've talked about it since then, and we still can't think of anything particularly significant that would have brought this about. I do think it was just some sort of cosmic anomaly that led to that happening.
Yeah, and we've had it happen a couple times, and we just chalk it up to, that was really weird. And there's really no way to record that or explain it. Like, you can record it in a journal if you do such a thing, but how do you prove that actually happened unless you're recording, with your phone, doing Facebook Live or something like that? There's really no way to prove it, but I know it happens. Like, it's happened to me. And it's just... It kind of reintegrates on the fact that this can be a major vortex here in the Four Corners area, because there are so many crazy, weird things that are happening.
There really are. It kind of... things like that definitely fall into the category of high strangeness, where it's not really attached to any other phenomena and you don't know why it happened. But the Four Corners area kind of reminds me of what goes on in places like Point Pleasant, Virginia, during the whole Mothman thing. There were other bursts of phenomena. There were record complaints of poltergeist activity and UFO sightings and things like that for 18 months to the day, and then it all just stopped. And the Four Corners kind of reminds me of phenomena like that, except there's really no cap to it. There's no end date. I think it's been going on for longer than I've been around, and it's going to keep going on. It is a very interesting area.
Yeah, it's been going on forever. Growing up in Cortez, we would go on field trips, and one of those being Mesa Verde. And I remember hearing the story about my mom. We were in Arkansas at the time, but she had this conference in Denver, Colorado, and she visited Mount Evans because that's her maiden name. And they went up there and took pictures, came down through the Pocosa area, and went to Mesa Verde, and she went down into one of those kivas. And my mom was very gifted. She was able to not only see spirits, but she would intentionally communicate with them. And I think she was dabbling a little bit in the white magic or Wiccan field. And she went into one of these kivas, and from what she said, she went down the ladder and turned around, and you know how they have that little stone thing built in the middle? There were 3 medicine men around that, and they looked at her and they were really angry because she had interrupted what they were doing. And she came back up, and my dad saw her, and she was as white as a sheet and looked like she was sick. And he's like, "What's wrong? What's going on?" And she had told him the story. And then the whole time after that, she felt like every car on the road was after her, and she actually wrote a letter that day to her father telling him that when she was going to die, how she was going to die, and that she needed him to help her plan her funeral. And they actually got into a pretty big argument over that, and he was angry that she would write such things, but she's like, this is really going to happen. And so he caved and helped her plan the funeral, and but it was just weird. Like, when I went there for my field trip, I was afraid to go to these places and go down into these kivas, but I didn't experience anything. I didn't find anything. But there is so many different things that do happen here, and some people experience the same thing, and some people experience different things. I remember probably 15 or so years ago, a UFO sighting outside of Cortez, Colorado, near Totten Lake, like a major green light, and tons of people saw it. Did you hear anything about that one?
I don't think I think I might have heard of that, actually. I think I know some people who saw that, but I definitely did not witness it personally.
Yeah, me neither, but I was really intrigued. I was like, holy crap. Like, I had never seen anything like, as far as aliens or UFOs in Cortez. There was all kinds of other different things like shadow people and stuff like that. But I never saw anything alien, and that was like a major sighting. Like, so many people saw it, and there's nothing to explain it other than UFO.
Yeah, God, just such interesting things happen here on such a mass scale.
Yeah, it does, and there's so many different variations, and we'll get into more of that this next hour. Like, I've heard stories of, I have more stories about skinwalkers that my friends would tell me, UFOs, even little dinosaurs and stuff like that. But on that note, we have to go on our second break, and you guys don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Heading to Vancouver and looking for some great nightlife? The Moose Vancouver is the place to be. Catch a game on one of the big screens, or just come rock out to your favorite 80s and 90s hair bands. Great food starting at $6.95. The Moose Vancouver is open until 2 a.m. nightly. It's easy to find near the corner of Nelson and Granville. The Moose Vancouver is the official rocking bar of Spaced Out Radio.
Find your escape where time has no limits. It's about living today and cherishing the heritage of yesterday. A spirit of adventure for what is new, with the nostalgia of the past. Your timepiece is a reflection of who you are. Life surrounded by beauty from the world around us to the soul within. EscapeWatches.com. There is no time like the present to enjoy your escape. Use promo code SMF2017 for your 20% discount today.
Coming September 28th to the 30th, it's our first annual Caribou Paracon, put on by Spaced Out Radio and the Canadian Society of Questers. 3 days of paranormal, supernatural, and spiritual knowledge in the beautiful 108 Mile Ranch, British Columbia. Tickets are $150 Canadian for the event, being held at the Spruce Hills Resort and Spa. Come watch our featured speaker, Grant Cameron, along with Lorian Fenton, David Weatherly, Ross Allison, and more. The Caribou Paracon, celebrating everything paranormal.
Are you tired of being blocked, shadow banned, or placed in jail for simply posting your thoughts on social media? Social Media Freedom can take care of that for you. Social Media Freedom is the newest and one of the best free new apps that allows you the freedom to post what you want, when you want. It takes seconds to download from your app store. Come join the tribe at Social Media Freedom. It's time to set yourself free.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
We're bringing scientific thought to the paranormal. Hi there, this is Spaced Out Radio scientist Chris Cogswell. Join me, Chris Zuger, and Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month, where we break down the who from the woo when it comes to everything paranormal. We'll investigate and try to bring sensible answers to those straight and sometimes outlandish questions people have. Hey, not everything has an answer, but we'll do our best. Listen in to Reality Paranormal only on Spaced Out Radio.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com.
When it comes to the news, we look for the stories that the mainstream won't cover. Welcome to Spaced Out Radio's The Encounter. This is News Director Everett Thiemer. The Encounter is about the weird and strange stories that occur daily, and we scour the world looking to bring them to you. You can hear me with Dave Scott every Monday through Friday in our Encounter news segment. Read us online at spacedoutradio.com or check us out and give our Facebook page a like at SOR The Encounter. So come give The Encounter a read.
Are you an experiencer? Have you had run-ins with strange creatures you can't explain? ETs, Dogman, Bigfoot, werewolves? They're enough to scare the daylights out of anyone. Hi there, I'm Butch Witkowski from your 4 Cop. And on the last Monday of every month, you can listen to me and the host, Dave Scott, talk about the weird and the strange being reported on Spaced Out Radio. I'm going to bring my investigations and sources, you bring your experiences, and we'll figure out the rest together. Strange Days on Spaced Out Radio. Come tune us in at spacedoutradio.com.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
Are you interested in advertising on Spaced Out Radio? Head to our website at spacedoutradio.com and click on our advertising tab. There, you will find an assortment of ways you can get your product out there with us, from radio commercials to banners and social media. Have a product you like our hosts to endorse? We can do that too. Visit spacedoutradio.com for more details.
Looking for nighttime adventure? Old school radio that delves into everything out of the norm? Then check us out at Spaced Out Radio. This is Dave Scott. Every Monday through Friday, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, we're going to take you on a wild ride ranging from conspiracies to true crime and every ghost, alien, and Sasquatch story in between. We're always live, and we're always interactive with you. So join us at spacedoutradio.com, where together, we own the night.
Find yourself constantly looking up in the sky, looking for answers? Have you had extraterrestrial contact? Are you an abductee? Looking for answers to your experiences? Hi there, I'm R. Keith Andrews, Spaced Out Radio's resident ET expert. Join me live the first Friday of every month, where I take questions from the Spaced Out Radio chat room and help you understand those from the far-off world. It's 2 hours of knowledge every experiencer should listen to. Hope to see you there.
Tonight's show and topic of discussion do not necessarily reflect the opinion of Spaced Out Radio, SOR Media, or its hosts. Listener discretion is advised. It's hour number 3 of Spaced Out Sunday with host Tessa N Thomas. Follow Tessa on Twitter at TessaTNT. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. Now back to the Rocky Mountains. Here's Tessa.
Hey guys, welcome back, and it's so great to have you on tonight, listening to all of our crazy, weird, and paranormal experiences here in the Four Corners. And tonight we have Terra Goens on. Terra, it's so great to have you.
It's good to be here. It's been a good time.
For sure, and I love, sharing stories and learning more about this area. It's so beautiful in so many different ways. Like, you can drive 30 minutes any direction and get some sort of different scenery, and it's also beautiful and drastic, as well as the experiences, both, normal and paranormal.
It is. It's a very interesting area for that, because the terrain is so varied. You can go from desert to mountainous. That just, I think, kind of adds to the experiences you have. It makes it kind of more removed, a little uncanny, because if you live where it's mountainous and then you go 10 minutes to the desert and have something strange happen, it kind of feels out of a movie. You're like, oh, well, that wasn't real, was it? Because it doesn't even look like that over here.
Yeah.
So it's a very interesting area for that.
Well, you were saying you had a couple more skinwalker stories, and I'd love to hear them because they're so intriguing.
I do. So the first one happened maybe a year ago, a couple months ago, almost exactly a year ago. And my 2 roommates and I were staying with my mom at the time. It was a guy I was dating and then my friend Eli. And we went to walk down the trailer park to this guy's house, his mother's house, to get something. And so it's about like 10, 15 trailers. It's not too far. It's 11 o'clock at night. And so we walk down and we get whatever we needed and everything was fine. Then we were walking back, and up in the distance, Eli looks and he says, "What is that?" And the other 2 of us look, and there's this giant wolf, bigger than any wolf I'd ever seen. And it
like
was
a
moving
dire
just
wolf.
so yeah, like that. And it was moving just so unnaturally fast that it looked like something out of, like, in CGI, like edited. It was so strange how quickly it was moving. And we all panicked, and we're all tripping over each other and trying to, like, run from this giant wolf. And we got back to my house. Somehow we lost it, just, like, weaving through trailers. It was a neighborhood I know pretty well. So we just kind of went through the trailers, went any weird direction we could to get home, to get away from it. And it was just sheer panic. No one was having any type of rational thinking. And we get back into my mom's house, and I'm like, that wasn't a normal wolf. And the other 2 people with me agree. They're like, that was weird. It shouldn't have been moving that way. It shouldn't have been going that fast. It shouldn't have been that large. And where did it come from? And there was this strange quality to it where it was completely silent. We couldn't hear its feet hitting the ground. We couldn't hear it breathing. It was just so quiet. And so we decide, okay, we're going to light a black candle for protection. We're going to sage the house. We put salt on the windowsill. And then 2 of us were smokers, the boy I was dating at the time and I. So we go outside to smoke. And about 10 feet away from the porch that we were on, there's very intentional whistling. And we don't see anybody. So we were very jarred by that. We were frightened. And we went inside, and I was remembering some things that a Navajo friend of mine had told me about whistling at night, drawing spirits to you and bringing things into your presence. And I was like, well, that's pretty interesting. Maybe we shouldn't go outside again tonight, because there was no source for the whistling, but it was so loud. It was directly next to us.
Mm-hmm. But
so
you can't
kind
see
of
anything.
A strange experience. Yeah, we couldn't see anything attached to the whistling. It was just disembodied.
That's so weird when
And
stuff
it didn't
like that
sound like
happens.
It's very strange.
And it's kind of, I don't know, it's not like normal sounding, like as if somebody was right there doing it. Sometimes it seems like more abstract, as far as like it's more prevalent, more echoed, and like ear piercing, like it really like makes the hair on your arm or whatever raise up.
Yeah, it definitely did have that quality to it, where it was just so clear and so real, and it didn't echo in any way. And it's in Animus Valley is where this happened, so there's a lot of echo to everything.
Mm-hmm.
But that whistle didn't echo. So that was it just had a very strange quality to it that just felt kind of unreal.
As I was thinking about skinwalkers and, experiences that I've had here, somebody had brought up Gallup, and I think I was 21 or 22 years old, and my cousin, now she's my cousin's sister, and I was adopted this last year, so she's my sister, but, I was driving her down to Phoenix, and I was driving a 78 Toyota Corolla. It didn't have a stereo in it that would pick up any stations, so we brought this boom box and we're playing music on it and stuff, and we had the windows cracked because we didn't have any AC, and all of a sudden we hear something right beside the car, like screaming bloody murder, just screaming at the top of its lungs, like something needed help. But the weird thing about it was, it wasn't like you hear this sound and you pass it and you should turn around and go help somebody. It stayed right beside the car for at least 30 miles. And we rolled up the window, we turned off the music and everything, and I'm driving as fast as this little rice burner would go, 78 Toyota Corolla. I think 110 is the most I got it to do, which is pretty impressive for that model. But it just made us jump out of our skin, basically. And it was like, it was just so crazy and weird and out of proportion for what reality is. Like, what the hell is this? And that was my very, very first experience with skinwalkers. I had heard stories from my Navajo friends and even Utes that had experienced different things. That one that I remember specifically is a friend of mine, and she was back in, I believe it was Arizona somewhere, possibly Utah, and they're going down this back dirt road to get to her family's home, and they see this old native lady alongside the road, and she's walking a little slow, but she seems like she's okay, but they just got this weird feeling about her, so they kept driving. And then not too far up the road, they see her again, and she's really limping, really hardcore. And they're like, okay, that's the same lady. How did she get up here? And then they see her again, and she's basically like dragging her right foot and walking along the side of the highway on the wrong side of the road. And then they get to a point where she's right in the middle of the road, and they stop and slam it into reverse and go back the other direction and stay somewhere else for the night, and then try to go to their family's home the very next day. But to me, that was the most like creepy, freaky experience like anyone could have that I had heard. I was just, it still blows my mind today. Have you heard anything similar to that or experienced anything like that?
I have actually. Eli's mother, Sadra, told me a similar story to that, where she was driving maybe somewhere around Boulder or Gallup. I'm not quite sure where, somewhere in this region. And there was this hitchhiker in the distance that always stayed at like a fixed point ahead of them for so long. Just, there was a couple hours of driving that this hitchhiker was in the same spot ahead of them. And it happened for so long that she said they got used to him being there, even though it was very strange to see someone that stays ahead of the car. And eventually they passed him, and she thought that was really strange, that all of it had happened, and why are we passing him now? And suddenly a huge ox came full speed from the side of the road and just hit her car. And she was shaken up, and they didn't stop, they didn't pull over, they just kept driving. They got out of there as quickly as they could.
Yeah, that's insane. Like, what's going to happen next? And you see these freaky movies where something is, you know, possessed like that. I don't know. I've had deer run into several of my friends' cars out of nowhere, and it's just, you know, the deer's buddy tossing out dumb Bob. Go on, Bob, you go first, and right into the side of the car or in the front of it or whatever. But sometimes there's just that, it just adds up to intent. Like, it's done all these things so far, and you're not stopping, so it's going to send this thing out in front of you. If you were to stop, who's to say it's not going to beat in your windows and harm you? But at the same time, like we were talking about earlier, mostly they're feeding off fear. Some of it is more evil, like I've heard people having their lives taken due to it, because sometimes you do that to take form, but I think they can take your face anyways, from what I've read. But I can't prove anything, and I don't have anybody on that can, you know, tell us what exactly is going on with that. I don't think I'll ever find anybody that would give up that information. I think that's basically impossible.
Well, I think even someone who knows their tribe's tradition of it, I think it does shift from tribe to tribe. I've definitely heard different types of skinwalker stories from Navajo people than I've heard from Ute people. So I think the tradition does kind of shift, like all forms of, you know, magic or religion. it shifts from area to area and from group to group. Even something as household variety as like Christianity will be different from church to church and group to group. So I don't think there really is any one straight answer for all of it.
Yeah, and there are differences. Like, from what I've read and heard, it originates with the Navajos, which are actually Dene. Navajo was the name given to the U.S. government by the Utes, and it basically means little thief, Navajo. So it's basically an insult to their tribe, and that's not their true name. They're the Dene, but that's where the skinwalker supposedly originates from. But I think there are also Ute skinwalkers, because another story I heard was from, I was raised, once I got into my aunt and uncle's home, LDS, and baptized into the church, and we had a couple missionaries over, and one night they showed up, and missionaries have always come to our house after hours, even though they're supposed to be home at a certain time. But these guys were really freaked out, and they had to tell us what happened to them because nobody else was going to believe them. And supposedly they were up near the Ute Mountain, and they were trying to, spread the word and knocking on different doors, and they went up this certain road, and it was taking them up the Sleeping Ute Mountain. And it was getting darker and darker as they proceeded, and there was no way really they could turn around. And at one point, a bunch of dog-like creatures came out and started attacking the van and punching it and everything, and they finally came to a point where they could turn around, and they hauled ass back home and came to our house, and we went out and looked, and there's actually, you could see like finger indentions from the knuckles punching the side of the car or the van, and the claws like digging into the side, and just different damage that was done to the vehicle. That was the most insane story that I had heard as far as an attack. I don't know. It's like they were intruding on that property. They shouldn't have been there. And so I think that's why it was so vicious. Otherwise, I haven't heard any stories that were particularly like damaging as far as physically. But that one was quite intrusive.
Yeah, that one was. I haven't heard any stories that were quite that physical as far as leaving damage before, except I do have one story that there was a mark left on the land I was near in this story. Do you mind if I tell it?
No, go ahead.
Okay, so I was somewhere, we were on a drive towards Phoenix, and we're somewhere between here and there. It was before the White Mountains. We'd been driving for a few hours, and our GPS kind of routed us down this weird road. It was off the highway, and we're like, okay, well, we've never driven to Phoenix before, so we'll just follow the GPS. And we kind of follow it, and it's just this dirt road that, like, was very unkept, and then there was this sign that said, unmaintained road ahead, and we started driving forward, and it was just holes in the dirt and like whole bushes of sagebrush. It was not even a road anymore. And we kind of drove forward, and there was this gate, and we were like, okay, so there's a closed gate, so we have to turn around. And we kind of tried to get it to reroute us, and the GPS kept just completely being strange. Just turn left, turn right, stop. Like just saying just weird directions that didn't make any sense. So finally, after about an hour of trying to get it to reroute us, we decide, okay, we'll give that road another try. And we go up to the gate, and it's just Eli and I in the rental car. And we're like, okay, so we have to walk up to the gate and see what's happening here. Is it locked? Can we get through? And so we both get out of the car, and I looked off into the field next to me because it was just field. There was nothing around us. And there are these footprints in the ground. Like, it was hard ground, but there are these really deep, like, fresh-looking footprints that were, like, maybe human, going off into just the darkness. And what was really strange was there appeared to be something growing out of them, but it was, like, this fleshy, bloody, like meat-looking substance. It wasn't plant life, but it was still appeared to be growing like a mold.
Yeah.
And so that was enough for me. I just immediately looked at Eli and I was like, get back in the car.
Yeah.
Get back in the car.
This is not right.
There's something horrible here. And so we started driving back, and we noticed this little, like, shack on the way back. And it just said knives spray painted on the roof for no reason.
Weird. That's like
and so
scary
we got away from the
killer
area
movies.
as quickly as we could. Yeah.
Let's hide here.
Really strange. Yeah. So we just kind of went back to the road and picked a direction and went that way until the GPS eventually rerouted us.
Oh, geez, that's crazy. That's like...
Yeah, that was...
horror movie story right there. that could have turned horribly wrong.
Yeah, that one really, that sketched me out. That one actually occurred this January. And I didn't know what to think about that. I'd never seen any sort of, like, thing like that. Like, what was growing out of those footprints. It was so strange.
Yeah, definitely paranormal. Not normal at all.
Yeah.
So,
it was, and the only...
Go ahead.
The only thing we could think of is that maybe could have been a skinwalker, because I've never heard of anything like that happening, but I do know that skinwalker phenomena has a lot of, like, just very strange details like that.
Yeah. I don't know. It is very strange and very intriguing, and I'd like to know more about it, but then there's that other aspect of me. I don't want to know too much about it because, you know, if you delve too much into certain things, it could cause issues in your own life. And I'm kind of happy being somewhat away from that. I'm pretty near, you know, Ignacio, which is a reservation land, and they've dug up different bones and stuff up there, and they've got ancient burial grounds and such. But I haven't experienced anything so far as skinwalkers in this area of the Four Corners. But Cortez was definitely some sort of different realm. Like, there were so many different things happening there. But a friend of yours earlier was talking about the Strader Hotel. Can you tell us more about that?
Oh, yeah. So I have a few experiences with the Strader. A lot of them aren't very impactful. It's just seeing shadow figures and having weird feelings in there. But I have one story where a friend of mine and I decided, let's just go in the Strader. We're just kind of window shopping after school. We didn't have any money. I was like 16 maybe. And we're like, let's just go in the Strader. Like, it's cool in there and it's haunted and we'll just go mess with it because, I don't know, 16-year-olds do things like that. And so we started just kind of exploring the building, and it just felt really weird and sinister in certain areas, like in the elevator, and there were just doors and corridors that just felt very strange, like more so than usual. And I didn't think too much of it. We saw some shadow figures. We got out, and then she went home, and I went home. And that night, my cousin Alicia came to stay the night. And so we both went to sleep in my bed, and in the morning, I got up. I had to go before she did. And I just kind of left, but I had a really troubled sleep. I had sleep paralysis. I had nightmares. I just had a really hard time sleeping. And I came back that afternoon, and I was like, hey, Alicia, what have you been up to today? How did you sleep? Because she had stayed at my house all day because she didn't really have anything to do. I think it was like a Saturday. And she looked at me and she was like, so I saw something really weird last night. And I was like, what do you mean you saw something weird? And she's like, well, it was like last night I just kind of saw the door moving weird. And I didn't know what to do about it, so I just kind of said a prayer and waited for it to stop. I didn't want to wake you up. And that was kind of strange. And then she was like, but there's more. And I was like, oh, what do you mean there's more than the door moving? And she said that the next morning after that, after I had left, it was about 8 o'clock or so, and she was in bed, and she woke up and she looked up, and there was just this shadow figure standing over her. And she kind of just like paralyzed with fear, didn't know what to do, and just started saying prayers and mantras and whatever it was that she knew to help her out of this situation. And it just kind of, I don't remember if she said it left all at once or dissipated, but it left. And she just kind of went out and tried to stay out of the room and kind of just like deal with it until I got home. And then we cleansed the house and we blessed the room and we blessed each other. And, you know, we burned cedar and sage and did all of the things, lit candles. And nothing really more came of that after that, but it was really interesting that something had followed me home, is what I think. Because that hadn't really happened in that manner before or after that. There was phenomena in that house, but different than that.
Yeah, and shadow people can be scary. Like, some of them, like I said before, are just, you know, people like you and me on the other side trying to form from whatever energy or matter they can gather. But other are, like, so solid and they just have this whole different energy around them and different intent. And Crow in the chat room was saying that he's dealt with shadow people and is flipping nuts, which is true. My first experience with them was when I was about 13 years old, and I really started running. Like, everywhere I went, I was running. And it was nice, but once I'd get back to my street, I'd just kind of cool down and walk until I got home, and I'd hear my name being called. Not really loud, but you can hear a voice calling your name. And I'd turn and look, and I'd see, like, a shadow of somebody behind me. And then the next time I'd look after I heard my name, they were on the other side of the road, and here and there and everywhere. And so you'd kind of pick up the pace and keep walking faster and faster. And so that was kind of freaky. Like, I had a break between the age of 8 until the age of 13. I didn't have any paranormal experiences there, but I would stay up at night looking for it because I was so used to it. And so I think that's where my insomnia comes from, the not going to bed until 3 or 4 in the morning. And with this after party stuff with this show, it's more like 6 or 6:30 in the morning, which I don't mind, but I really enjoy it. But it's stuff like that, and like you were saying earlier, you had that issue as well, dealing with these paranormal things. It kind of keeps you awake. It's not just your mind being overactive, it's just that expecting something weird and paranormal to happen.
Yeah, it does make you be more of a night owl eventually, and I think at first it stems from a fear of things happening, but later it becomes an expectation, and then it's just the pattern in which you live your life.
Mm-hmm.
I actually have a quick one about an entity in my mom's house when I was a teenager trying to help me sleep. It was a night, just some random night, and I was up, and I just had all this anxiety and all this fear, and I didn't know why. It was just happening. I was just afraid. And I was in bed, and I was trying to sleep, and I couldn't. And then what sounded like this woman humming just started, and it was clear, and it was in my room, and it was just a woman humming. Like she was trying to help me fall asleep, like trying to comfort me is how it felt. It just sounded and felt very maternal. And I wanted to be comforted by it, but it did freak me out. I was like, okay, you have to stop that. You're not helping. And I like woke up my mom, and I told her what happened, and she was like, oh, well, it's probably your Aunt Cecilia or one of your grandmas. And nothing else really came of that, but I thought it was interesting that whatever may have been around took an interest in the fact that I couldn't sleep.
Yeah, and it can be comforting in a certain extent, but at the same time, it's something that's not normal. And like I was saying before, as kids, like the world is a scary, crazy place anyways, and then you add this different element, and it just like really blows your mind, and it's harder for you to wrap your mind around it, and you do have that overactivity of the mind, especially at night when you're going to bed. And even if you voice it to people like my grandparents, my aunt, other people, it's just your imagination, just go to bed. No, it's not. Like, I'm actually seeing these things, and it's kind of insulting when they do that, but at the same time I understand where they're coming from, you know. Just go to sleep already, like I've been dealing with you all day. But it is, and I think, like you're saying, it starts at this early age, and then it becomes just some sort of habit that you retain. It just becomes normal to you.
Yeah, I really think it does. I think one of the most shocking revelations in experiencing paranormal things was that not everyone did. Because as a child, I was an experiencer from an early age, with that out-of-body experience being my first memory, and everyone around me was also very early experiencers. It was a fact of life, I feel like. So finding out that there were people who were going to dismiss it and who wouldn't believe it was really strange for me, because I was like, no, it happened. Why don't you know how to fix it? Like when I'd stay at friends' houses as a kid, I'd be confused when all of the lights would turn on and off, and they'd go, oh, we don't talk about that.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, well, why don't you know what to do? My mom knows what to do. My aunt knows what to do. I'm too young to know what to do. You need to fix this.
Yeah, and when, like Crow is saying, oh, I hated that when I was a kid. It's just your imagination, and it took me years to open up again, because it does make you feel like you're wrong, because you are a kid, and you do look up to these adults that are trying to guide you through your life, and it kind of gives you this feeling that maybe you are imagining it, but I just knew, and it did anger me. I'm like, I know what I saw, and it's not my imagination. Like, I would draw and do other things that were from that side of the brain, but this was actually happening, and there's so many things that, and I covered a lot of it last night in our show with my big sister Kathy, but we experienced so many paranormal things. Like, it was just our realm of reality, but for my aunt and for other people, like, they didn't experience that, or they didn't believe in that, and even had they just kind of try to close it down. But I couldn't, because I knew it was there, I knew it was real, and I could not deny it. It would have been easier maybe, but I couldn't.
I definitely had that feeling too, that no matter what people told me, I couldn't deny the experiences that were happening, because it was so shocking and so frequent and so real and tangible.
And it really does, like, mold who you are, like, all your experiences you have in the real world or the paranormal world. It really does build upon you, and I love that I am open-minded and that I have had these experiences, and even though I did hear these things from people, I knew it was real, and I try to keep that door open. So many people close that door, and they lose that gift of being able to experience these things, and I think it is building up. I think things are happening more and more often, and I don't know if it really is a sign of the end of times, which people have been talking about the end of times since, day one. And another fact is they've been talking about how disrespectful kids are these days. It's just something that repeats itself, but there are so many signs as far as weather and different crazy tragedies and all these paranormal happenings happening. I think perhaps maybe there is some sort of apocalypse going to happen sometime in the near future. I'm not talking 5 or 10 years, but within our lifetimes, I believe that we're going to see something truly tragic and horrible.
I think what we're looking at, from just the things I've read and the things I've looked at, is we're looking at a period of a great shift into a different mode of consciousness. And whether that means that we're going to leave our physical realm and be doing something else, or we're just going to expand here, I don't know. But I think everything's pointing towards great change in one direction or another. It could be looked at or called an apocalypse, but I feel like it's more just an area of difference, something uncharted, something we don't understand yet, where we're moving more away from how we are as a society, where we're very materialistic and we're very into logic and tangible goods and tangible evidence. And we're going to be moving more into the intuitive sides of reality and looking at things more energetically and with this kind of eye of what is possible, not what is quantifiable, but what is possible.
Yeah, and I don't know. I believe anything is possible, and like I said before, I'm not going to buy anything that somebody lays before me. I'm going to study it and look at what I can. Like, we got Google. It tells you everything, basically, but you can't believe everything you read. But, I mean, there's so much stuff happening and so many people experiencing things. Like, we have our paranormal team, and we can't go out and just have fun investigating some haunted area. We are busy helping people in their homes and their businesses, trying to get cleared or getting to know their ghosts on that property and coexisting peacefully. But it seems like it's amped up. Like, there's more and more happenings, and I don't know what exactly is going on with that, but it's pretty interesting. But there's still a lot of people out there that don't believe that there's anything after life. And, you know, I can even just look at my kids and know there's something more out there than what we know here today. Like, especially my youngest one, she's had a past life and she's told me different things, and it just really blows my mind. I'm like, I don't remember that, but I do believe you, because I don't want to shut that door or that window on her. I want to accept her and let her know that she's okay and she's not crazy, and these things are real for her. May not be for me, but we all have our own experience and our own path, and it's just interesting, the different things that we do experience. And I wish people would call in with their stories, but I have tons, and I know you have more. What else were we going to cover this evening?
I could talk about looking at the younger generation, too, since you're talking about your daughters. My younger brother had some pretty interesting experiences that I was a big part of. So we're living at Whispering Pines in our second apartment there, and I'm maybe 12 through 14 in this story, and at night there was just some pretty crazy activity happening in my room. Like, in the living room, I could hear it sounded like someone jumping off the couch and just, like, bang on the floor, and, like, stuff in my room would move around a lot, and it was pretty frightening for me. And I didn't quite understand what was happening until my mom was kind of talking to my little brother, who was maybe 5 or 6 at the time, and he started talking about how at night he would get up and he would look at them in bed, because they shared a bed, because it was a small apartment. But he would look at himself and my mom in bed, and then he would go and jump off the couch, because he wasn't supposed to do that, because we lived on the top floor, and how he wasn't allowed in my room. So at night, when I couldn't see him, he would go in my room and he would touch my things.
Yeah.
And that continued for a number of years. And it was kind of a charming story that he just wanted to go hang out in my room, and he wanted to go kind of mess around and be a kid, and didn't realize the significance of leaving his body. It didn't scare him. And so we kind of just left it there, and we were like, okay, well, we're not going to talk about it. We're not going to influence him at all. And when he's older, we'll ask him if he remembers. And just recently he turned 16, or is about to turn 16 in January, so I decided to bring it up to him. And I was like, hey, do you remember going in my room when you were a kid? And he was like, at night? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, yeah. I guess I never really think about that, but I did used to do that. Why didn't you ever kick me out? You just keep sleeping. Or you just go in the living room. And I was like, oh, well, because I couldn't see you, Jesse. And we kind of talked for a while about it, and he told me what he remembered, and I told him how I remembered it. And that was kind of a very interesting instance that from an early age, we were both astral projectors.
And it's so weird, because you really don't have the knowledge of that, or the knowledge of how to do that. You just naturally have that gift to be able to do it. Anytime I've experienced it, it's been very uncomfortable for me. And I've thought about doing different things to get a better grasp on it. But at the same time, I'm just afraid of losing control of myself. Like, leaving my body. I've heard there's a chain. People are like, no, it's all good. Nobody's allowed to inhabit your body while you're gone. But if somebody can inhabit my body while I'm here, what's going to stop them from doing it while I'm gone, right? Like, it's an actual fear that you can't deny. Like, it's happened while I'm here. How is it not going to happen while I'm gone? Because there's so many things that have been after me since I was a little kid. I just don't feel comfortable with leaving my body. I feel like I have to stay and protect it. And so maybe astral is just not for me. It's for other people, or out-of-body experiences. And somebody was talking about where you can remote view, which is totally different. I haven't been able to do that at all, or even tried to. I've seen things happening before they do, but I haven't seen things that are happening at the time they're happening.
I've never had any remote viewing experiences, but I have had friends tell me some pretty interesting stories about remote viewing.
Okay, well, can you share that with us? That's an interesting topic.
Yeah, so a friend of mine just a few months ago was telling me about how he was on a car ride, and to be clear, he was pretty stoned. He had smoked weed. So that could have affected this. I do think it alters your state of consciousness. I think it makes you maybe more perceptive to things, but I don't know. That's a whole area, whether or not it's credible, because he had smoked weed that day. But just for transparency's sake, he had done that.
Well,
and he was on this
you've
car
heard
ride.
things about how it can open your mind more. Like, people have talked about different things, doing that as far as it expanding the mind. I don't know. So maybe it could have piqued his mind in order to envelop that or explore that.
I do think it definitely, substances like marijuana or mushrooms or psychedelics do help you be more in touch with the intuitive. I definitely do believe that myself. I know a lot of people will discredit experiences that happen on these drugs, though. But he was in this car ride, and he said he was looking out the window, and then he could just see this forest. And he was just kind of, looking around and traveling through this forest, up above, just as a disembodied experiencer, just kind of watching it. And then he saw this clearing where these people were just gathered doing, he doesn't really know what, just kind of gathering in this field, in this forest. And it looked like maybe some kind of spiritual gathering or something. And he was just kind of watching everything until eventually he just slowly came back to his body and just kind of finished out the car ride and was like, well, that was interesting. And then kind of came home and just told all of us about it later.
So what exactly did he experience? He just had, some sort of mind-blowing experience, or was he able to communicate to you what exactly he did experience?
He really just told me that kind of synopsis of I was watching this forest. I was over it. I was just kind of, he said he still understood himself and who he was, because I know in a lot of these experiences people talk about how they don't remember their human self and they're just kind of a consciousness. That's how my first experience was early on, is I didn't know anything of that I was the baby on the table, or that was my grandmother, or that was my mother. I was just watching. But he said he was conscious of who he was, and he just kind of felt okay with it. And he was just kind of feeling I don't know if this is real or not, but I'm just going to kind of see what happens. I'm not going to try to mess with it. And he just moved over this forest and watched it.
That's cool. That's a nice experience.
Yeah, I thought that was a pretty cool one.
And you said you had a couple more, or?
I do have a couple more stories. Nothing really more of that vein of out-of-body experiences or anything like that. I do definitely have more stories. A lot of things have happened over the years.
Heck yeah, let us know.
I don't know. What kind of thing are you looking for? Yeah, what kind of thing are you looking for? Are there any questions in the chat?
I haven't seen any in a while. They're just going back and forth and being little dirty birds. But no, anything weird, paranormal, in between that you can share with us, I'd love to hear it. Like, 'tis the season to be spooky. Halloween's coming up, and I just want to hear your experiences and what you've gone through as far as your stories.
Okay, here's a kind of really weird one that kind of really scared me. So this isn't about, I think 2016, I'm in the car with my friend Teresa, and we're somewhere in the Midwest. It's the middle of the night. I'm not sure where we are. We were on our way to Standing Rock during the whole protest of the North Dakota Access Pipeline. We went up there and helped with that for a week or so. And we're on our way to it. And the GPS kind of routed us onto this weird dirt road, which happened to me again later with that skinwalker experience. So that made me nervous off the bat in that story. But it kind of routed us onto this road, and it just felt really weird. And she's a very spiritual person. She's very intuitive. So we were on the same page with talking about how the energy felt. And we kind of went up the road a little bit, maybe 10 feet or so. And at the top, there was this, like, building. It looked very official. It looked like a government base of some kind. It's just out there in the middle of the Midwest somewhere. And we were like, this seems wrong. It feels weird. It feels scary. That's weird. So we turned around and we got back on the highway. And we started driving, and there was this big thing on the side of the road that started to go towards the road that was like a long, skinny bear. It was just so weird. It just was at weird angles, and it was standing on 2 feet, and it just had a lot of red in the mouth, but it popped even in the dark. I don't know if it was its gums or what. And its eyes were just very, very white and just so noticeable. And so we both, it was so scary. So we both immediately freak out. She put her foot on the gas pedal and just gunned it as fast as her Subaru could go. And I just got down on the floor because I didn't want to see it. And I just covered my ears and covered my eyes and just sat down there until we were past it. And then we were both talking about it for a while. And the radio was on, but there were no stations it was picking up. So it was just that kind of buzz when the radio's on, but nothing's playing. And we were talking about it, and we started talking about some other scary experiences we'd had with ghosts and aliens and whatnot, and she told me some stories. And then suddenly the radio just pops to life. And this very weird, garbled, mechanical, kind of weird talking started coming through, and it wasn't saying any language I knew or that I understood. And so we're like still freaking out. It's still the middle of the night. We just saw a weird creature in a government base. And so we're trying to turn the radio down, and it's not turning down. And we had walkie-talkies for the other car because we were in a carpool caravan. So we get on the walkie-talkie, and we're trying to talk to Krista, who's in the other car, and we're like, hello, hello, and they're too far in range for her to hear us. And so we just turned on the radio and kept driving and started, I had crystals with me, and she had sage, and we were burning it in the car. We were rolling down the windows, and we were just saying whatever prayers or mantras or anything we knew, just anything we'd ever heard that was protected. We're like, okay, help us. What's happening here? And we kept driving until we saw Krista's car maybe 10 miles later, pulled over to wait for us. And we pulled up to her, and she's like, hey, do you guys want to stop here for a minute? Maybe we can sleep. Maybe, I know you smoke, Tara. You can get out and smoke. And we were both like, no. No, we're going to keep driving until the sun is up. We have to just keep going. And so we did, and we all just kept driving. And we hadn't really explained to anyone in the other car what had happened yet. Because we didn't want to stop. We didn't want to be in the area. Mm-hmm. We were like, wherever we are, we just need to get out. Whenever we get to whatever the next state is, we'll figure out where we are, and we'll go to a gas station, whatever. And so we started seeing just these weird lights in the sky. And at first I was like, oh, great. So some aliens are here to mess with us, and I'm not about that.
Yeah.
And I was looking at it, and it started to look more organic and kind of snake-like. And it was just kind of zipping around, and it didn't look like or feel like a UFO to me. And I was like, well, what is that? And the only thing my mind could equate it to would be a dragon. And I was like, well, that's not true, probably. And I was looking at it for a good hour, just in silence, and then finally I was like, Teresa, do you see that thing in the sky? And she's like, yeah, I do. And it just looked like kind of this like snake made out of like light. It was just kind of moving around, and it moved very much like, kind of like a caterpillar, I guess. And it was just so weird. We kind of talked about it for a while and what we thought it could be. And eventually the sun started to come up, and we couldn't see the thing anymore, and nothing else really happened from there. But it was a really strange experience. I still don't quite know what to make of all of that.
Aw, Trip is in the chat room, and we were talking to your mom about listening to the show and getting hooked, and I was actually sharing my page when I found Spaced Out Radio, and I was like, Spaced Out Radio, like, I can totally relate, because I'm spaced out, and so I got in there into the chat room, and Trip and Kat were like, oh, you're totally going to be hooked, like, after the show, blah, 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 and I was like, I never listened to podcasts or any shows like that, but I was, like, from day one, I was there every day after that, and started helping with the YouTube and all this other stuff, and now, like Trip said, now I'm behind the mic, and he said he's so proud of me, and thank you, Trip, I love you for that, because I almost didn't do it because I do have that social anxiety, and I'm an introvert, and it just really felt foreign to me, but I really love this place that we call Spaced Out Radio, or I like to refer to as the SOR Asylum. But it's like another branch of yourself, like another family, and I really love these guys, and I hope you guys come back, because I'd love to have you back on the show again and hear more of what you've experienced. That being said, we have 7 minutes left. What are some highlights that we haven't talked about yet that you want to share about this beautiful part of the world that we live in?
I think if you go out towards the Four Corners Monument at night, you'll see some weird things. Is like one thing I'd emphasize for someone visiting the area is if you go out there and you're just in the desert at night and you drive around, you know, you'll see people on the side of the road who aren't really there, or lights in the sky, or just strange animals. There's a lot of things that happen towards the Four Corners itself that I think you could get a lot from. I think there are a lot of lessons in these strange things that happen, and they are here very much to teach us, as much as sometimes it can be pretty random and pretty weird and kind of frightening. I think you can learn a lot from this intuitive side of the world, and from paranormal experiencing and unearthly contact and all of these things. And I think that if that's something you're interested in learning more about and experiencing firsthand, this area is a very good area to come to. We have a lot of sites that are so energetically interesting, like Arches National Park just has some very distinct feelings to it. And I think if you come out here and you just explore enough, or if you live out here and you just take the time to be outside at night and to be open to it, you can experience a lot of really wonderful, comforting things. And sometimes you'll get really scared, but you'll probably make it out okay.
Yeah, I've experienced a lot about this area, and I'm still here. And I do want to know more, and that's why I'm doing what I'm doing with the paranormal investigation and helping people out there, because a lot of people don't understand what's going on, and a lot of times it's just a spirit that needs to be heard. Nobody wants to be forgotten, and we're all going to be ghosts someday, so, you know, have that respect for that other realm, you know. I hate when people go out there and poke and prod and antagonize spirits. You know, you should have the utmost respect for that individual, because they were once people too. There are things out there that were never human. I do agree with that, but still, for the best outcome, have that respect, and, you know, and you hopefully get that in return. But, I mean, I think that's the best way to go about it. When you guys go out and investigate, do you antagonize or provoke a spirit, or do you have that respect level for them, knowing that they are, you know, like beings?
Because I've had just so many experiences with just seeing things and feeling things from such a young age, I've always looked at it as dead people are really just that. They're just dead people. And that's all there really is to it in my mind is, okay, so there are going to be kind people, there are going to be unkind people, and you kind of just have to approach it with that respect and with that expectation of you're going to treat me the way I treat you. And just, I approach it being as open as I can be and as respectful as I can be, but also be sure to, like, keep my boundaries and keep myself protected is, I think, a pretty important part of it. But I don't think that there's a whole lot that's out there to get you as much as we do have these scary stories. I have a lot of stories of, like, my grandfather coming to me after he died and just less frightening things like that. And I think it's easier to focus on the skinwalker stories and these encounters that are more frightening, because it just does elicit more of an emotional response, but that isn't all there is to these things.
And
I think as long as you approach it with respect and protect yourself, you'll be fine.
Yeah, and I find a lot of comfort in the fact that I know that there is something out there after life than just being buried in a hole 6 feet or more under and being consumed by the elements and the worms and bugs and all this other fun stuff. Like, there's something more. You're not just trapped in there. You can go for an astral hop. You can go look over your family. You can go do so many things because we do have that free agency as individuals. And, you know, I think due to our beliefs, a lot of these spirits are trapped in, and that's just because of their belief system, what they believe in. And we've been able to help people like that on the other side. But Trip is asking in the chat room, Tara, have you thought about writing a book?
I actually have. I'm working on a very early draft of a book about experiences that I've had and my friends have had in the Four Corners area. I kind of was thinking about plugging that here, but it's so early in being written that there's no point. I'm not even close to being done with the first draft. But thanks for asking that. I'm glad you think I could.
Yes, we believe in you, and you do have so many stories and so many experiences, and you are so well-versed and such a knowledgeable and smart woman. I know you have so many great things within you, and I implore you to do that. Like, just because this is first draft, just keep hacking it out, and, you know, maybe it'll be 7th draft before you feel okay with putting it out there, because you might have that obsessive control tendency, and it just has to be perfect. But I know everybody here has loved hearing your stories, and I know so many more people would buy that book because there are so many people out there that have experienced and want to hear other stories to get that acknowledgement and know that they're not going crazy and that they are experiencing this. And it was so awesome having you on here, and we're actually heading out. So Terra Goens, can you tell our listeners how to contact you or how to find you with any questions?
I think the best ways would be, I have a Facebook. It's just TerraGoens. I don't get on it a lot, but I do my best to check it. And I actually have an Instagram. I think I gave you the link earlier that I'm on more frequently, and that'd be a good place to find your questions. And thank you guys for having me on. I've had a really good time, and hopefully I'll talk to you again.
Yeah, I hope to have you on again because I know with my show last night with my sister, we did not even cover half the spectrum of what we've experienced. And I know you probably have so many more stories out there, and you'll think about it, and you'll be like, oh yeah, I should have said this or this or that or that. So I totally love to have you back, and anybody else you want to pull in with you. And I love that we were able to talk about our area and things going on here, and I really appreciate you being here and reaching out to me to be on the show because I had an awesome time.
I've had a really good time too, and yeah, definitely. Maybe I can get back on with a few of my cousins one of these times that we can finish up the other parts of that Sundance story that I wasn't here for. I think that'd be interesting.
That'd be so cool. Thank you so much again for being on tonight. It was so wonderful having you on this evening.
Thank you for having me.
Good night, Tara. And we are doing the after party if you want to hang on. And thank you so much to everyone in Spaced Out Radio, Facebook, Spreaker, Twitter, Paranormal Radio, TalkStream Live, Deep Talk Radio, and wherever else in the universe you are listening tonight. I had a wonderful time this evening, and it was my pleasure, literally and figuratively, and I can't wait to do it again next weekend on spacedoutradio.com. Until next time, nighty-night, love and light to all my space phases out there, and don't forget, we are all in this together. Together, we can make the world better, and together, my friends, we own the night. You guys have a wonderful week, and I'll see you back here next weekend. And if you're a night owl like me, make sure you call in for the after party. We do Skype video, and you can even call from your cell phone, 970-335-9596. Hang out with us, and if you don't, I'll see you next weekend. Take care of yourselves. Night-night, love and light.